Well, welcome. You're on the ball today. I just need to share it to Ronnie one.
Good evening. Any super chats? Yeah, they're all going to my bank account.
Yeah. Yeah, super chat's friendly.
Yeah, Ronnie and Roger did really, really well there.
Yeah, they did. They did. Especially considering Jordan acted like a bit of a brat for the most part.
He just come
Well, I
across.
say I say the most part. I missed the first 20 minutes because I had to rush out literally as soon as it started, and then when I came back, like 23 minutes or something was in, and it was already starting to irritate me from that moment. So I just jumped straight in the chat. So I've missed the first 20 minutes, but I can guess that it was probably just camp out, camp out, camp out.
Yeah, I didn't see it either. Tammy was kind of watching from probably about 6 o'clock ish, so she probably jumped in not long after you. I was listening in. Then she took James to bed at about 7:30. So I jumped. That's when I jumped on the chat. As soon as I jumped, well, I was in from the minute that I kind of went, "Hey, super chat's been turned off." As Roger reminded you all that this is a social movement.
Hey guys, Andy, you were right. The only thing was the quantity of campouts was a bit off. You needed to say it about 10 times more, and you would have been nearly right.
Really, was it that bad?
Fuck it. There was an ongoing meme. That's why anytime it was mentioned, what me and Michael Askew were going camp out in the comments.
I did guess that, but yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it was predictable as fuck. Like, there was no shock for me. I mean, as soon as I saw that was billed on YouTube and Roger mentioned it like a fortnight ago, I mean, I literally said, "Well, what's Jordan going to bring to the table other than talking about camp out?" And I knew that he wouldn't be able to resist holding that grudge from like 14 months ago now. Um, yeah, he couldn't wait.
Yeah, it was frustrating. I had a feeling you weren't in there from the start because you were abnormally quiet.
Yeah, no, I literally basically said hello, and then I had to rush out more or less as soon as he brought the guests on. Like as soon as the guests came in, that's when I had to go. So I
Yeah.
missed that section, and then when I got, yeah, like I said, I think I missed about 20, 25 minutes, something like that. And then when I came back on, it was already just in amongst it. So I just jumped in the chat. Hiya. But no, I think
Sorry, I
they both
still
did
haven't pulled up
exceptionally well, to be
Instagram.
honest, to deal with quite a lot of obnoxiousness.
It was frustrating. It was frustrating, embarrassing, rude, privileged.
That Jordan needs a fucking slap. If he was my son, I would slap
We're,
the
we're, we're
fucking shit
peaceful
out of
here.
him.
We're peaceful. But yeah, hi Roger, welcome. How do you feel that went, or how do you feel about it?
I'm so
Um,
vegan.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Rog.
I think I've probably talked myself out, but well, I think really part of it was a setup to have a go at Ronnie, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, I, I think
Hundred
that was
percent.
kind of because of the way that it was allowed, without interruption. I mean, it took David Rams probably 10, 15 interruptions before he started using his mute button. So yeah, it seemed as though like that had been talked about beforehand, as though, look, I want an opportunity to bring this up, and it was like, yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, obviously, as suspected in a way, Jordan didn't really have anything to talk about besides vegan campout, and there was obviously a lot of bitterness about what had happened. But in terms of kind of aligning it with what we're supposed to be talking about, it didn't seem to fit too well, which is why I
No,
was
not
trying
at
to bring
all.
it round to the thing about Ronnie's point about, well, if you're not vegan, go vegan, and if you're a vegan at camp out, be an activist and stuff, as though that would be the reason for camp out. But
Yeah.
of course, they said that that's not what it's there for.
Yeah, I mean, there were a number of contradictions within that thing from Jordan. I've heard him numerous times. In fact, if you go and find his live stream or whatever from the week before the Tim and Ronnie conversation, he strictly says that Camp Out is not an activist event. Those are his words. And then obviously today it's all equal, that's him changing his opinion, not the other way around. That's definitely true. And he also admitted that his fans, as he dubbed them, attacked Ronnie in retort and then denied it and said that it wasn't equal and there wasn't anything from both sides. So it was clearly that he had an agenda that he wanted to fulfill before that live stream started. Probably the only reason that he agreed to go on it. Obviously, plus it's free promotion. But I mean, one of the things that didn't get mentioned that I did say twice in the chat was that maybe I should have sent him a super chat and he'd have read it out. But when we actually look at this from the face of things, we discussed this last week or the week before. I think there's like 4 other camp out stroke festivals stroke events this summer that aren't getting any attention or any mention or any promotion like that is. Like, that's already massive, getting loads of money. Why not have a show on where you have the guy from the retreat or the one from Evesham, and let's start promoting other events?
Well, it's because size matters. When David
Now,
Lynch
Roger.
talked about good things going on in the world, and he started talking about Earthling Ed and Camp Out, right? These 2 big things, as it were. Never talked about a proliferation of the grassroots. Just a couple of people. I mean, the thing that we did in Dublin today, that kind of thing would almost like be invisible to the people who are celebrity orientated and stuff.
Yeah, the other thing he said, which although I don't have a lot of faith and trust in Camp Beagle, they did, I'm sure, have a screenshot of where he flat out denied to do the bus thing, and whereas tonight he kind of said that didn't happen. Whereas I'm sure Camp Beagle had proof that they'd said no, we're not interested in doing any activism.
No, but I mean, David is right though, Andy. That he's got the right to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. If he wants to have literally the vegan Glastonbury, that's fine. Just
he's basically saying, look, I'm not much of a campaigner. I'm a business person.
Yeah. There's no issue with that. I just think
so he's very much Alex O'Connor. He's being honest. He's very much Peter Singer. He's being honest about what he is. He wants to make money out of vegans. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, but that's the same as a lot of people these days, isn't it? That's become more to the fore. That wasn't something that we experienced back in the day, is it? It kind of seems to be becoming more and more.
Well, you couldn't though, Ronnie. The only way you could do that is by becoming a staff member of the national groups.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think the thing is that I mean there are a lot of things that are run by vegans that don't include airage. I mean, I'm for instance, really very critical of a lot of vegan cafes where you just go in there and eat vegan food, and there's nothing about the ethical, nothing about the ethical aspect of veganism at all. And it's just as if someone can go along and say, "Oh, we ate Indian yesterday and Chinese the day before. Let's eat vegan today," and it's kind of on that level.
Yeah, one thing that's and by the way, I did cut right through you at one point, Ronnie. So I wanted to apologise for doing that.
I didn't notice it, to be quite honest.
I mean, the one point that I'd make quickly that I think you did a much better job of making sure that Ronnie actually got the chance to answer himself than what the moderator of the show did.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Honest, it's a good job that you interjected, Roger, a couple of times. Otherwise, Ronnie wouldn't have been heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of quite difficult because I think
Giles, you're right.
Where Jordan explains about and tries to make out that that venue where the camp out was held was kind of pretty much the same as any other venue. Like you can't find a venue anywhere that isn't associated with some form of oppression of other animals, and probably on some level that's kind of true. But I think it's still important that you kind of, do. That doesn't mean that then it doesn't matter where we hold the venue, and it doesn't matter where the money goes for that. You see, and I think that's the thing. It's like you kind of sort of we've got a choice. You've kind of got a duty to choose the place that kind of causes the less harm. And when the camp out was actually held at Stamford Hall, where it was last year, the Countryside Alliance actually celebrated the fact, isn't it wonderful that these vegans are holding a camp out on a shooting estate?
Yeah. I remember it, Seamus. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. And it isn't just a shooting estate. There was animal farming going on there. There's fishing. Yeah. And you can't say that's nothing to do with the people.
Well, he never had to address the point that during that debate, right? So you had Tim, who obviously made that point on the debate with you. You had Jordan, who made that point initially. You had Chris, who then joined that conversation between you and Tim to make the same point. And then when David and not sure who the other YouTuber was did their reaction video, they both made the same point that Jordan can't find a venue that doesn't physically exist. Well, What,
Well,
did they only build it this month,
well,
or
I was just about to say that, Andy. Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Like
where was this event before? Because I mean, if you're talking about you've got a story from decades ago at this place, then it existed last year,
well,
definitely.
it was. Yeah, I mean, it was previously an RAF base, and then it became a kind of a sort of museum for like a kind of car museum type place for old sports cars. I think that's kind of what it is now. And it's an events venue as well at the same time. So fundamentally, it's not to do with the oppression of other animals, unlike the other venue. And I think that it's, you know, I kind of congratulate him for having found a venue that is kind of, much more ethical, or much less unethical than the previous one. Yeah, I think yes, well done, but could not that could that
I
not
think the
that
relevant point,
yeah.
Ronnie, is this, which is, I mean, I noticed in the comments just as I was switching it off that somebody had said I hadn't said anything relevant, but what might be relevant to this conversation is this point about making veganism normal. What do people think about this?
Well, you see, the thing is that you see,
It's
we have
complicated, isn't it?
we have to change what normal is because,
Yeah,
as
that's it.
you
That's
say,
the first thing that needs to
I
happen.
I
Yeah, I think
say
normal has to change before we can make
normal
veganism
is fun
normal.
because you see, the thing is, it isn't just to do with, um, the problems for other animals aren't just to do, um, with them being reared and killed and caught, and that's not the only way that humans oppress other animals. It's much more than that. So if you're going to have a society where, yeah, we don't consume animal products anymore, but everyone carries on exactly the same, then that's not animal liberation, because you're still going to have massive over impacts, harmful impact of humans on the natural world. And this is another thing that kind of wasn't really thoroughly discussed. To do with capitalism, that whatever kind of political and economic system you have that is compatible with veganism, it can't be capitalism. And the reason is because capitalism just drives the destruction of the natural world.
I'm not no exactly because I've had this conversation with Roger a couple of times in private, but I don't think we've discussed it on here. Do you also think a big part of the reason that a lot of these big name activists do like to dilute the definition down to what they do, i.e., reducing suffering? It's not about it's only about non-humans, blah 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 blah. It's also because that kind of hides or even just completely illusifies the idea of being anti-capitalist too. If you're only looking at it as reducing suffering, anti-cruelty movement, blah, 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 you're not looking at the bigger picture, so they can actually prey on this capitalist element without anyone really calling them out on it. Because veganism, in most people's minds, the people that actually are giving them the money for the most part, isn't anti-capitalist. And most of those people in that chat tonight, actually, in fact, there was one guy that said money is the root of all awesome. Like, he seems they seem to be perpetuating that attitude because
Money is the root of what? Awesome.
we're all awesome. Yes.
But you see, it's kind of it's narrowing down. It's a form of reducitarianism, because it's actually narrowing down what veganism really means.
Yeah. But
Because
that's what I mean. But
yeah,
that's
Yeah, but
exactly the
you've got
point.
to do
So
that
if
if
you
you want to
narrow it
make it
down to
normal.
kind of
What you're
what you
doing
said,
right is you're fitting vegan to normal people instead of radicalizing people
yeah.
to fit
well, I
vegan.
think I think one big difference between the vegans of old and and a lot of kind of modern day vegans is that we truly lived veganism as a kind of whole lifestyle. It affected every aspect of our lives, and like we were like primarily vegan, and that was our fundamental philosophy. Okay. I think we were all at fault in those days for not actually campaigning for veganism, and we campaigned on single issues, but we were still, you know, our whole lives were like permeated with the vegan ethic, you might say.
Well, I don't remember doing anything else, Ronnie. I mean,
No,
you got up in the morning and you
and you,
campaigned until it
you
went
got
dark, you know.
but I think
Yeah.
what's happened now is like veganism is kind of used as an add-on. In other words, you can still live exactly the same life, except all you do is you swap, the meat burger for the vegan burger. right?
Yeah.
And you carry on exactly the same, driving driving your SUV, flying halfway around the world, being as materialistic and as everything exactly the same as before, except you switched your products, your animal products for
Yeah, I mean, Andy, you know from the Kathleen Janaway thing that you enhanced recently, they had a incredibly radical and revolutionary idea. We're going to bring about veganism, and that's going to end war and poverty,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Veganism in its sort of like actual, genuine meaning should be the solution to most of these world oppressions. But like this is like when the more that it gets reduced down, especially as George's new version of the definition he wanted to challenge would have only made it about non-human animals. I mean, that's such a change from the original. That's cancelling out being against oppression in general, isn't it? That's speciesism essentially that you're promoting.
I think the reason that they're interested in coming up with their own personal definitions of veganism is because nobody really likes the radical things that Cross and Watson said. That's what's really going on.
I think a lot of them don't even look at what Cross and Watson said. I mean, the thing is that, you have to go back to that. And it kind of is a little bit like the Bible, that people can, to some extent, find what they want in that definition, not in the definition, but in what the founders of the movement said.
Yeah, there is some of that, yeah.
And that's what they do, that, people pick out of it what they want, the same as.
Yeah, because you've got to read it in its entirety, haven't you?
Yeah. And I think that's what happens with some people that look at it. But I think a lot of them have never even looked at it. They've never even gone there to look at what the people who invented
No,
it.
but the point is, Ronnie, on that's the first thing you do, right? If you want to suggest a change within the social movement, you have to then learn what the score is and then critique it, rather than just going, I'm just going to make it up on the spot and this is it as far as I'm concerned. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, you could extend that to literally anything. If you wanted to learn how a certain part of the engine worked, you're going to need to, if you wanted to change it to improve it, say, you're going to have to learn how it works now first. You're going to have a great understanding of every part and what they do now before you can look to correct it or better it or change it. You can't just go, well, yeah, probably does that. So
and you've got to have a pretty good idea of why that there is a reasonable reason to change it in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, I said this to you the other day when my kids were discussing. I can't even remember what it was now. I think my youngest Lucas said that he wanted to make a time machine, and Max was like, "How does it work?" And it was just like, "You turn it on." Like that was the solution. The internal workings of something that we haven't invented yet. It was as simple as you turn it on. That because you haven't got to understand anything. That's no different than you defining the definition without knowing what it is at the beginning. You've got no inner workings or inner understanding of any of it. It's just like, yeah, we'll change it to this instead. And I think it's so ignorant, isn't it, to have that, just. But that's what we've got within the movement. We've even got people like Reasonable Vegan who feel more than qualified now. They've made half a dozen vegan videos about the subject that they can put forward a new definition, and that should be viable.
I kind of think how you challenge in those people though is ask them like kind of, why are you vegan? What is the fundamental reason that you're vegan? Where does that come from?
Yeah, well, I think the one thing that Jordan did say that I did hear him say that I would actually say was probably the best point he made in the entire thing, or at least that I heard. I mean, I did miss the first 25 minutes, so it's possibly made another one. But he did say more or less what I said in my language talk, that the problem is we could go around now and pull in 10 different vegans. I mean, we could ask the chat now. There's 13 people in here. Everyone type what you think your interpretation of veganism is. Everyone's going to more or less have a slightly different one. Maybe not so much in here because it's kind of a similar crowd. But if you went and pulled 10 random vegans, or you put it in one of the Facebook groups, you'd get such a diverse opinion. I mean, that's a serious issue, really. You've got and we're talking about people that they're not just saying it. That's their genuine belief, what it means as well.
But you see, if they are whatever kind of definition they put on it, if they kind of are, if they consider themselves to be vegan, then the next question would be, well, why is that? Why have you become vegan? Whatever definition you have of it, why have you done that? Where does that come from? And then if that comes from, well, I'm opposed to harm being done to other animals or whatever they say, then you can use that to kind of to sort of broaden the definition in their own head, because you say, yeah, but okay, but what about the harm that's done in this other way? What about what about the kind of premature ending of those animals' lives? What about the fact that we even consider those animals to be our property and all that?
Well, I think the problem there, Ronnie, is the fact that if you raise questions like that, you're making the problem in their eyes bigger, and that means then how can you make veganism normal if you're making the problem bigger and bigger and bigger? You've got to make it smaller and smaller and smaller in order to say to people, well, you don't have to do much. This is it, and then you're a vegan, right? This is reducitarianism, as you said.
Yeah, it is. But you see, of course, at the end of the day, it's to do, with oppression. It's to do with exploitation. It's to do with
Yeah,
ending.
but everybody on the chat would agree with that, Ronnie.
Yeah, they would. But you see, it's like if that's kind of fundamentally why that person has decided to become vegan, then you kind of sort of take it back to that and say, well, yes, but like, then obviously there's more to it than what what the definition you've given of it. If you see what I mean, they're giving a reducitarian type definition to it, but in actual fact, when you really talk to them, they are against the other things that they kind of haven't covered in their definition. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I noticed that everyone leaped to Ed's defence, Roger, when you mentioned him, saying that he was definitely rights-based, but then when they were pushed for some evidence of this, nobody could provide any. Everyone just repeats the same thing. I've heard this so many times now. When you sort of like call it accurately, they'll go, "Oh no, he's definitely right." Well, where's the information? Where's the evidence? Because what he says doesn't reflect that.
Well, I always go back to that appearance on national TV, which is even with the big influencers, it's not a thing that happens very much, right? And so spending half of the interview arguing with a slaughterhouse worker or owner about the actual percentage of times that the stunning system actually works is a total waste of time.
Yeah, for real. And I mean, I think this plays into something we've discussed before, that those are the videos as well. I'm pretty sure that exact clip that you're talking about is featured on a compilation that Plant-Based News put out a couple of years ago, where it's like the 5 best vegan wings.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right.
So like that plays into that crowd where that's all for vegans. That's not changing anyone's view about anything. That's just playing into an audience that already exists.
Yeah, but you see, the point is, nobody is saying, well, what is Ed saying? He's not saying go vegan. He's saying make the stunning work.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sorry, like for the documentary especially, I watched more Ed in a few days succession looking for sort of clips of him than I ever have probably in my life. And if he's not a welfarist, he's doing a really brilliant job of impersonating one.
Well, but they said that was the case, didn't they?
Mate, why? For what reason?
Well, so you don't put people off. This is Tobias Leonhardt stuff now.
But I mean, I've tried very hard loads of times to think about how this could be used effectively. So if Ed used the reputation that he's got and the mantra that he uses to get a job, say, as the chief executive of the RSPCA and changed them from the top down, I'd say, you know what, this is quite effective. But other than doing something along those lines, pointless. As a solo influencer, no, I don't understand why someone apparently, I think it actually makes it worse, apparently that he's a rights-based person that understands. I think that makes it worse because he knows even more what he's saying.
I don't know. It's like some kind of twin track thing saying, well, he's rights-based, but he's not going to mention that because, right? Well, how does that work? I mean, it's kind of, well, I am vegan, but I won't mention it because, and so
yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you find it too complicated to talk about the subjects, why would you have arguments about the stunning process?
Well, it's not complication. It's to do with tactics they were suggesting.
Yeah.
So it's not that he couldn't make a rights-based thing. It's just that you don't want to lose people and you don't want to alienate people and all the
But
rest of it.
surely I can understand that to some degree, right? And this is going to bring me onto the animal rights thing that I was going to talk about. But once you've got a platform, like I can understand it if you're trying to build yourself up and that's the way that it is and that's the route that you think is best going to be how to aid your success in that sense. But once you're on mainstream TV, once you're given a column in a newspaper, or once you're given the chance to express your opinion, express your real views. You don't have to dilute then. You've been given this platform. Then there's been so many numerous times where he's been sat there on live TV or recorded TV where he could have genuinely said, I use this information, I use this wording, or this is the language that I choose because it's easy for people to relate to. It's easier than causing this hostility towards them. But actually, my position is such and such, such and such, such and such. Never heard him do that. And that's the one clarification I make because I know that personally I have ragged on animal rising quite a bit. But that video from the other day with Jacob Rogmeese with Alex, is it Lockwood, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. The first 2 minutes were a bit flowery as usually animal rights and stuff is, but the last minute or so where he clarified that it wasn't about welfare, so important. That was brilliant.
Well,
That's the best bit that I've ever heard them say.
Their press release about they recently rescued 3 lambs, and their press release about that mentions opposition to use and exploitation of other animals.
Yeah, I saw that too. So yeah, I mean, literally, I wanted to make the point that we've spoken about them a few times in a quite a negative way. So credit where credit's due. I thought that recovery, especially as he corrected Jacob with like, no, we're not against this. This is our position. Really, really good.
And that seems to be a shift. But the only thing, the major thing that I still have issue with them is they don't say anything to encourage people to become vegan.
No. I mean, he did say he was vegan, didn't he? Which is one of the first times I've heard the word mentioned at all. But he didn't encourage veganism.
Yeah, hang on a minute, though, guys. I mean, if Jordan can run camp out the way he wants, they can say what they want about their campaign, can't they?
You're not wrong.
Well,
the same logic.
Technically, I suppose the only difference between Jordan is, as you rightly stated earlier, Jordan has said from the get-go, even though he's received criticism, that I'm not interested in doing it your way. This is the way that we do it, come or don't. Whereas Animal Rising, every single time that they've been put on the spot and responded to anything, has said we are an abolition group. This is our position, and then that's not reflected in the language. That would be the difference, I would say.
No, I think that's right, and I think that. It's kind of a bit confusing as to how they see what they're doing, where they're going with what they're doing. In other words, without saying to people, ordinary people become vegan, what is the process by which they expect what they're doing to affect any change? How do they think that's going to create change?
Well, we know, don't we? We know that they're wanting to put pressure on the system to create the change. That's their entire thing, isn't it?
Well, that's kind of that's what they say. System change, not not individual change. But then, of course, we get into the discussion of like, well, kind of how do but by what method do you create system change? How are you going to?
Well, that's why I said that I'd like to see what research they're using to suggest that what they're doing is going to bring that about, because presumably they'll have had it. And I think also in terms of their claims making and everything, and a distinct avoidance of the word vegan could be because of whoever they're consulting, it seems to me.
I think it might be, and it'd be interesting to ask them on Monday evening, and
is it Alex? Is it the same Alex that's joining you Monday?
Yes.
Okay, because I mean, I can speak for him at least because he responded to me on Twitter, and anyone's more than welcome to go and look at the exchange between us from yesterday. But he essentially said that the reason that they don't promote veganism as opposed to a plant-based diet is just because the word has got a stigma around it. That was essentially his reply. But he did clarify that he was more than happy to say that he was vegan and did state so on the TV show, which is true. But I mean, it's just buying into that. Well, the word's been sort of like demonized too much. But that's our fault.
But
our fault.
But the thing is, other groups have gone in the opposite direction, haven't they? I mean, you've got Viva talking about vegan all the time. They talk about go vegan all the time now, don't they? Um, and Animal Aid, you know, talk about going vegan. They don't talk about vegetarian like they used to. So these other groups seem to have gone the other way. You've got products in the shops with vegan all over them. It's surely not a scare word anymore. You know, and the thing is, you see, because of philosophy. How else are you going to?
Well, we'd have to ask him what the stigma is, wouldn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
what the
exactly that.
stigma is. Yeah, I think so because unless people adopt that philosophy, it's the name of a philosophy, isn't it? And then like kind of then
Yeah, surely
how are
we
you
should
gonna?
be combating and correcting this stigma because this stigma is all based on people that have never took a second of their life to ever understand what veganism even is,
Well, you'd,
let
you'd have
alone
you'd have
produce
to
it.
also interrogate whether this stigma is real, because the
Well, yeah,
point
yeah,
is,
oh,
no,
exactly
no
that. Yeah,
matter no matter what you said, some people are going to go apeshit about whatever you say. It's just like on TikTok. If you put a post out, you know what some people are going to say, regardless of what you say, regardless of how diplomatic you say. If you talk welfare, they'd have a go at you. If you talk rights, they have a go at you. You talk animal liberation and quote Singer, they'd have a go at you. So, to what extent, how is this stigma articulated and who by
Well, yeah.
and how many?
Now, is there? It's interesting because in reply to uh, the the live stream post on YouTube for Monday evening's chat for our chat with the folks from Animal Rising, Kevin Watkinson's put a post where he talks about an organisation called CEVA, CEVA. Do you know what that stands
Yeah,
for?
that's Tobias Leonhardt.
Ah,
Centre for Effective Vegan
that's it.
Education.
Yeah, Centre
now
for Vegan
he,
Activism.
he's
That's it. Yeah,
he's suggesting that um,
should be anti-vegan
they're,
activism when it.
they're,
To be
they're
fair.
that they're validating organisations like CEVA rather than challenging them. So I just wonder whether there's been contact and discussion with people from that organisation. And
Well, just looking from the outside and listening to what they say, it sounds like it.
yeah, yeah,
Makes sense, and it's what you've said a couple of times, Roger, haven't you? That they're probably having like Zoom calls or whatever.
yeah. But you see, the thing is that the ordinary people, you know, read that, read about the lambs being rescued, read about there's people here that are talking about they're opposed to, these animals being exploited and oppressed, right? But people go away from that with no idea about what they can do about it. They'll just think, isn't that terrible? Let's hope the government will do something about it. And then just carry on with their everyday life and carry on eating lamb for the Sunday dinner. Because nobody's saying to those people what they can do as individuals to do something about it.
But that's the way it always works, Ronnie. This is why you've got the moderate groups going, isn't this terrible? Sign this petition, right? Because you're giving people something to do, which is hardly doing anything. Whereas if you go live vegan, then I mean, you know what the argument is, that, well, you're just asking for too much at that stage then.
Well, it seems strange that if you look at the number of people that have gone vegan over the years, there has been this huge increase in veganism. Now, might not be happy about what people consider veganism to do, but nevertheless, there's been a really big increase in the number of people that consider themselves to be vegan. Well, that's
Well, yeah, but even then, you see, the point is there is that might be to do with things like reporting and the quality of the research, because maybe those people are reporting that they're plant-based, and
Well,
then
that's what I was about to ask. The kind of people usually that do that kind of research, right? That's market research. So they're companies. So I would imagine quite a lot of that research is based on the consumer of plant-based products as opposed to actual vegans.
yeah, they used to conflate vegetarians and vegans all the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
and in recent years they've stopped doing that. But in terms of plant-based, there might be some research to suggest that people react weirdly to the word vegan, but positively towards plant-based. The only question then goes back to what Ronnie said, which was, well, how come all these supermarkets have got vegan written everything instead of plant-based, right?
Yeah,
Well, that's a really good point that I was actually going to bring up whilst we were on here. So, for a long time, I've refrained from really using the word vegan diet and like corrected people even to the point where like this is why people think that it's a diet. However, from being in quite a lot of these groups on Facebook, it seems that the general public's opinion of the definition of plant-based is majority plant-based. The consumption of animal products is still okay in moderation.
yes, that is one definition of
So,
plant.
like, I can't encourage people to call it plant-based
No,
instead.
no, no. I mean, it's food that's suitable for vegans, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
Rather than,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way of
yeah,
terming it, actually, as opposed
yeah,
to.
yeah, and um,
Rebecca in the chat
I
is
got
saying, "I
so
got
poorly eating
poorly
vegan.
eating
Well, did you have
vegan."
a banana? Carrot?
I mean,
I
I
thought
wouldn't
they meant
suggest
eating
eating
a
vegan, to
vegan,
be
and it
fair,
was
because I
but
mean,
anyway, folks, I'm unfortunately going to have to go. I've got to be up at 5 in the morning. So
that's a normal day for me, Ronnie.
it's not for me, not on my end. But I've got a total of a 10-hour drive tomorrow.
Oh, where you going?
Well, down to the retreat animal sanctuary down in Kent.
No,
With,
he's going on holiday to
uh,
Australia.
I'm
Yeah,
going
Australia.
to Australia, yeah, to some vegan camp out over there to eat cupcakes. Um, no, there's an event at the retreat animal sanctuary, vegan run animal sanctuary, farmed animals down in Kent, and I'm taking Louise down there because she's staying there for a few days and she's speaking at a conference that they're doing there. And because of other things, Sunday's the kind of the only day that I can kind of really take her down there. And then I've got to come back the same day because I've got to give medication to some of the cats. That one in particular has to have medication every day, so I can't stay away. So the only way that I can do it is kind of come back the same day. So it's like 5 hours, an hour's break, and then come back.
Can't you post her there, Ronnie?
Yeah, right. Wouldn't it put her in like one of them machines that kind of
Obviously, it's something we can discuss properly off air. But seriously, in future, if I can potentially help you out with the cat situation, it's not far for me to pop over and do that to save you having to
no,
drive.
that might be something that kind of I mean it's just at night. I mean we can go
Because
out.
I know how I've been to the retreat quite a few times, so I
Yeah,
know it's
yeah.
not just the fact that it's far; it's the drive as well. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to do
Well,
something
you
like
see, the
that
thing
going
is,
forward if it meant
I
helped
kind
you.
of I don't go the motorway. In theory, it's quick. It's kind of faster on the motorway, but I don't drive 70 miles an hour, so it's like slower for me. But also because motorway driving makes me so tired,
Yeah,
I stop. Whereas on the ordinary roads, I don't get tired the same way. So when you add it up, it's just as quick for me to go on the non-motorway route, and of course that's why it's kind of so long, But then,
yeah.
you know, how it's
Maybe
kind
it's just that you didn't notice that you fell asleep all the time, Ronnie.
well, I used to have to stop and have like cat naps, at the services, and by the time that you add them up,
No, motorway driving is very, very boring.
yeah, I hate it. And obviously, if you're driving the non-motorway way, it's a much more interesting drive, and you can kind of say, well, look, I've enjoyed the drive. Whereas on the motorway, it's just awful, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
yeah, I don't disagree with that. But yeah, seriously, going forward, if I can help out in one of those ways, and it means you haven't got to do such a horrendous drive in one day,
yeah,
I'm more than happy to do that.
it's kind of it's quite rare that that kind of happens. But I mean, it's kind of because originally she was going to go down there with someone else who was also going, but then he um, broke his ankle and then he's not able to go. So, you know, I said, well, look, I'll take you because like I don't want to miss out on her being able to
Yeah,
talk at their
fair enough.
conference. But yeah, give me a chance to have a little look at both. They've got a vegan cafe there, which hopefully will still be
Yeah,
open.
does some great food there as well.
Yeah, it looks good. I've looked at the website. It looks like a terrific place. And they've got a camp out there this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, I'm going to their one. It's
Yeah,
Wild Kind Hearts. It's called.
yes, and that's great. And I'm really pleased that that kind of thing's started up. And I hope next year that there'll be more of them because potentially, like loads of the sanctuaries, particularly ones for farmed animals, could host a camping event.
Yeah.
Base to do it and raise funds for their for
Does
themselves.
anybody want to talk about the issue that Rebecca Rose has brought up about health, or are we going to?
But anyway, look, I'll say cheerio to you all, and we'll speak soon, and I'll be in touch with you when I get back, Roger.
Goodbye, Ronnie. It was lovely
Yeah,
listening to you
Yeah.
tonight.
Okay. Yeah.
Bye,
For
buddy.
Monday. Yeah.
safe journey tomorrow.
See you, Ronnie.
Sorry, I'm just catching up so that I know what the issue is. I saw the first comment and then I was listening to Ronnie.
Yeah, Rebecca's got type 2 diabetes. It's apparently in remission. She's also on immunosuppressants and said that a whole food plant-based diet, a well-planned whole food plant-based diet, can't put type 2 diabetes into remission with immunosuppressants. So for me, that would indicate that she's got other underlying issues as well. So I'm not qualified to comment on that, to be fair.
If you're not, I'm definitely not.
Yeah. But I mean, it's nutrition at the end of the day, isn't it? So if you are taking in the nutrients that you require, it doesn't matter where you're taking them from. You could be taking them from a shake, like that's made in a factory somewhere, as long as it is balanced and adequate for your personal dietary needs. There's no reason why a whole food plant-based diet or even a processed plant-based diet can't be healthy as long as you're hitting all your markers that you require.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
The one thing
for
I
me,
would ask so that I can actually have some input in this conversation is, Rebecca, what would you be, or your understanding of what vegan means, first of all? Because I mean, even if that is the case, and it's physically impossible for you to get everything that you need from a whole foods plant-based diet, and that is a physical impossibility, we'll give you that. What about every other aspect of veganism? You know, are you potentially still wearing animal products? Would you visit the circus? Would you visit the zoo? Would you breed a dog? How do you feel about other forms of oppression besides food?
Great point, Andy. I was just about to say the same myself there.
We're waiting for an answer now. But one of the
radio
things I was going to
silence.
bring up, just because I heard it mentioned very briefly on the live stream, and I've heard it mentioned as like a hypothetical that's put forward loads of times, and it's like could you go back in time theory and kill Hitler to make a change? And it's like, why are these hypotheticals always violent? Would it not be possible to go back in time and take Hitler out of the environment that created him and put him somewhere else where he was educated in a different way? Why have someone got to go home and just, murder a child? Why is always the violence is the solution, even in hypothetical situations? Like, I've noticed that time and time again. Like, it's so true that violence is normal and normal is violence, because those are even the examples that people think of. Is it not possible to just completely change his upbringing so that he didn't become that person? I mean, just put him in a different country for a start would have a completely different change on his life, right? Without murdering him.
Give his dad a condom.
Well, yeah, like, there are other changes that could definitely be made without murder. I thought we were against murder.
I mean, to be fair, rather than giving his dad a condom, because that's a one-use item, you could literally just, give his dad a general anesthetic and then give him a
The
snip.
big knee. Yeah, the big knee.
Yeah, that was sorted.
Okay, so it still seems like, for the most part, you're abstaining from things. It's just the fact that it interferes with your diabetes, by the sound of it, which I'm certainly not qualified to talk about.
To be fair, I will say, type 2 diabetes, people are recommended to eat a higher fat, higher saturated fat, lower carbohydrate diet, which you can still do plant-based. But it looked like chicken, fish, and dairies indicate, dairy is one of the worst things you can consume as a type 2.
Yeah, I was going to say dairy would definitely be one of those ones that
yeah,
I do know about. Nothing else, but dairy definitely is a no-go.
So it's kind of like it's almost like a slimmed down version of a keto diet that recommend people with type 2 diabetes. So it's like high protein, high healthy fat. So things like don't eat bacon, eat an avocado, for example.
Unsaturated fats.
Yeah, your unsaturated fats. Yeah. So the reason for that is that there's 9 calories per gram in fat.
Did you just recommend an avocado?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
We're going to get cancelled.
Piers Morgan's not in the chat, is he? So, but I mean, there's nothing in chicken and fish that you can't get from a plant-based diet. It's not full of carbohydrates. So, like your omega-3s, which is the only thing you'll get from fish apart from protein, really, and the fat, is found in certain nuts and seeds, like walnuts, for example. They're not high in carbohydrate, they're very high in fat, very high in protein, and they're also full of DLA, which converts to omega-3 when it's in the system, unless you've got a nut allergy or something, of course, as well. But you can get that from flaxseed as well. So like it's like 2 tablespoons. In fact, there's nothing that. I think it's a tablespoon of flax seeds a day is enough to get you your omega-3s that you need every single day. Um, and the rest of that's just basically protein without the carbs. So unless you're also intolerant to things like soy, then I mean, you could even supplement with a plant-based protein shake. Push comes to shove, but I mean, it looks like, from a very ignorant point of view, it looks like your mindset's almost there, but there could be some other things that you can try when it comes to diet, which is part of veganism, but not the whole part of veganism, that would support you with your diabetes, with the ailments you've got. But obviously, I would always recommend speaking to a medical professional, someone, however, who has experience in plant-based diet, someone like Nelsie.
Yeah, no, that's saying Nelsie would be a great person, but I mean, just to qualify all of that as well. I mean, that this by the sounds of it, it would be one of those qualifiers, and as far as is practicable, like no one's expecting you to put your own health at risk. We don't live in a vegan world. We understand that pretty much every pharmaceutical on the planet is tested on animals. Like these are things that at the moment, without changing massively how the world processes things and how they treat others, there's not a lot you can do about. There really isn't.
Like if you spoke to a plant-based nutritionist, someone who's actually got a qualification in plant-based nutrition, someone like Nelsie on TikTok, and they said, yeah, it's physically impossible for you. That's where the practical part of the philosophy comes in.
Yeah.
It's not that I can't find somewhere that, sells plant-based food in the airport that I'm in for 4 hours, therefore I eat a bacon sandwich. No, it's physically impossible for you to do it. Therefore, there are going to be some leeways in order for you to sustain your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so your consultants again, yes, I see where they're coming from, but I would also back that up with someone who knows about plant-based nutrition to get a third opinion. Ideally, just some advice that you might be able to get for free.
Absolutely. I mean, and the only thing that I'd add to that as well is that they're just repeating the same rhetoric that they've always said, that no one's ever challenged. I'm sure if you said, well, actually, I've spoken to someone like Nelsie, for example, who said this, and this, they wouldn't argue with you. They just go, okay, fair enough. But it's
Yeah.
only because most people just hear you need more red meat for iron, for example, and they walk out and that's it. So the doctor's never been challenged. So the next person that comes in with an iron deficiency, they just suggest the same thing again. They're not negative about these things a lot of times. They're not even asked. They're not even challenged. They're just, it's just the normal thing that they've always repeated for the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's one of those where it's like you say, it's the path of least resistance, because they go, oh, you need to eat more protein and fat, therefore you need to eat more animal products. And it's like that's the obvious thing. Well, actually, that's just because that's all they've known, and that's the, if you will, in kind of inverted commas, the normal way to do it.
Yeah,
There are
absolutely. I mean,
alternative ways for
at
you
the
to
end of
get
the
those
day, you could look
nutrients.
at the example of if they weren't challenged, if there wasn't new information that was found and presented, then GPs would still be recommending cigarettes to people, right? So,
Yeah, exactly.
so that's the part of it. It's the same with everything. If we don't challenge these things and we don't correct them, then how can we moan about them not knowing? It's different if you correct them and you meet resistance, but if they're not even being challenged, then we can't really say too much. It's up to us to correct these people and to educate them.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. And let's face it, how many people has these consultants had to support on a plant-based diet?
Yeah,
Because
exactly that. Exactly
you've
that.
got
We're talking about a minority within a minority, so this is it. It's not just necessarily about challenging it. It might be that they've never even thought about it because they've never had a patient that was vegan before.
Yeah, exactly that. What I would do, Rebecca, my advice to you, would be, one, get some advice, ideally free if you can, from someone who is qualified in plant-based nutrition, because that is what their qualification is. If they are an actual dietitian, they will have an awareness of your other ailments that are a factor within your nutrition.
Yeah.
Then I would go back to your consultant with that education that you've got and talk to them about the best way forward for you, and go from there, I suppose. I would never say just introduce or remove things, because it could make you more ill if you do that blindly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rebecca, just to give you a bit of a backstory on me, I had diverticulitis, an incurable bowel disease, or so I was told. Before I went vegan, I was nearly having a section of my bowel taken out. I was always told by all my consultants every time I went into ER that I couldn't eat seeds, I couldn't eat nuts, I couldn't eat sweet corn. It would damage my bowel and I'd be 10 times worse. I went vegan. I started introducing these things back into my diet. And on my last colonoscopy, they had to double check my records to make sure I was who I was, because my incurable bowel disease had pretty much cured itself. I went from having about 30 to 40 diverticuli to about 2, which is, they were gobsmacked when they kind of seen that live on the colonoscopy. So I'd always take what they say with a pinch of salt and get multiple opinions, and speak to the experts who know about this and get different opinions. There's nothing wrong with asking why. You know, they said to eat dairy, chicken, and fish. So if I would ask them why, what's in that I need, and why can't I get that from any other source, and see what they say.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's a
definitely,
great point.
definitely.
It's find out what it is exactly that they're suggesting those things for, and ask why you couldn't get that from somewhere else. And honestly, I think a lot of the time, they get a bad rap, but a lot of this is just that they're never challenged. They're never talked to about it. So why would they think any different?
Well, the thing with the NHS is they're taught what's achievable for the majority. So, bearing in mind that what they include in that is they basically have to treat the general public like they're stupid, because actually they need to create something that's a blanket approach
Yeah,
that
yeah, I understand that. Yeah,
the most illiterate and uneducated people can't follow. And that's why you'll get like the Eat Well guide that comes out, the Eat Well plate that comes out, which is kind of like your guide on nutrition. And nutritionists who know about nutrition, Hench Herbivore ripped the plant-based nutrition guide to bits. And he was saying it's absolute crap, because it was like recommended mock meat and all that sort of stuff to replace meat. And I mean, yes, you can, but it's not the healthiest thing you can have.
yeah.
I mean, instead of having a chicken burger, get some tofu. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah, I mean, I think it all ties back into kind of the point that we started the show with, that it's not necessarily, I mean, when it comes to the food side of it, we don't necessarily need people to research the philosophy. But if you've got no sort of like commonality or understanding or passion about it because it's not your thing, like if you're a non-vegan that's asked to put together a plant-based, you're just going to Google what other people have said or whatever. You're not going to have any passion about it. You're not going to think about it. There's no normality because it's not you.
Yeah,
So I
exactly
mean,
that.
I think the only way that they could ever have a successful pamphlet or booklet like that is if it was written by people who were at the very least plant-based, and that doesn't happen. It's written
Yeah,
by
yeah, yeah.
people that have done minimal research on a subject.
Yeah. And when you think about it, you go, what do you replace chicken breast with? Oh, you can get that Quorn vegan chicken breast stuff, can't you?
Exactly that. Yeah, I mean, which would be like my mum's thinking, right?
Yeah,
Like someone that's not, it's just common sense
yeah,
answers as opposed to an understanding because this is who you are and what you do every
yeah.
single day.
And it talks about having to use fortified foods to get calcium. Doesn't talk about green leafy veg and
And I
tofu and
mean,
all
to
that
be
sort of stuff.
fair, like this is the sort of thing that I'm sure if the NHS rang up the Vegan Society and said, "Look, would
Yeah.
you be able to provide a pamphlet for us, which is actually accurate and everything else?" That's the sort of thing that they wouldn't even have to do it.
Yeah, but like I say, that the main issue there is there's an assumption that people don't want to put like lentils in their bolognese sauce. They want something that resembles mince. People don't want to, put like chickpeas and sweet potatoes in their curry. They want something that replicates chicken, and
Right.
that's in chickpeas. Well, why would you buy chickpeas? That's not what most people would do. So that's kind of like I say, the point of the NHS comes from kind of education for the
Do
most
you not think
illiterate,
it could
and
be
those.
presented to them in terms of economics then?
Well, like I say, it's the perception So it's the people that have basically written the Eat Well guides, especially the plant-based one, they're assuming that people would never think about buying a tin of chickpeas that would just always want something that resembles chicken. Because who buys chickpeas through choice? You know, who eats beans and rice through choice? In Christ, that's basically what I live on now when you think about it, a combination of different types of beans and legumes and different types of grains and vegetables. It's like it's the poverty diet, but you spice it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that really
But then,
expensive poverty diet.
Yeah, really
yeah,
expensive
but
welfare
the thing
diet.
is, I mean, I now make bolognese, right? And it's about like I mean, I can't remember how much mince was that we were buying when we were buying it when we weren't vegan, but you're talking at least £5 for a pack, and instead of that, I'm putting about 12 pence worth of lentils in. You know what I mean? Like, so it's and then I'm having that with a bit of pasta, like I would normally. So you're talking what maybe's from probably £1 a portion just for the meat. It's 12 to 13 pence for the entire 4 portion lot that I make. And like when you make a curry, it's like I say when I talk about rice and beans, it's chickpeas, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, onions, peppers on rice. It is literally rice and beans. But the herbs and spices that you use is what makes the flavor. Like no one eats meat unless you're buying a steak, and most people that have a steak have it with peppercorn sauce on, yeah, or some kind of flavoring.
Yeah,
No one,
or at the absolute least, right? I mean, even before it comes out to you and you get it on your plate, there'll be like salt and pepper added.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So it's like it's the
no one is
texture,
eating
isn't it?
flesh like proper flesh. It's still
Yeah.
seasoned, even if you have it as kind of as natural as you possibly can, like a steak. It's still
But
seasoned. You're still going to probably put a sauce on it or
yeah.
whatever.
But even then, it's like you taste in the charred grill of whatever it is that it's been
Yeah,
cooked on.
and also I suppose no one is having just a steak on a plate, right? So you're going to have like chips or a mushroom or salad or something else, which is going
Yeah,
to add flavour and taste to the palate too.
yeah.
So
And
like,
it's
yeah, there's all these different factors.
and it's the texture that people are kind of funny with rather than the flavor because I still stand by that my bolognese is tastes
No worries,
very
Dr.
similar
Pepper.
to how it would if I had minced cow flesh in there. See you later, Roger. I'm not surprised you're knackered. To be fair, you've had a bloody busy day.
Yeah, very busy day. Yeah, thank you for
So,
joining us.
so yeah,
See you,
like I say,
Roger.
my lentil bolognese tastes very, very similar to the cow flesh bolognese I used to make, but the texture is different because obviously lentils are a different texture to mince. And once you get over that, actually, it's the same meal. It's the texture rather than the flavor that most people feel there's a void of, and that just takes time to adapt your palate for. It's like now, I mean, me and Tammy very rarely eat mock meat, and if we do, it's generally speaking like a plant-based burger.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and that,
I'm pretty much the same. The only thing that I would say, and sausages, them are the only two mock
yeah,
things that
sausages,
I would
yeah.
say that I regularly buy. Really, yeah.
But I mean, even now, like if the texture's like I mean, Tammy's just made it. We tried the kids with chicken, like I'm saying chicken, vegan chicken curry tonight. Yeah, what the cluck, and the not something we would normally buy. We were gifted it actually by somebody that we know. Um, but the texture of it was very, very fibrous, and it was very similar. And it was kind of like for me, I was like, thankfully the flavor was more like chicken crisps, you know, like that artificial chickeny
Yeah,
flavor.
I get
Because
you there.
if it tasted more like tofu, which is what I remember chicken tasting more like, is more the soy flavor, then I probably would have been a bit put off by it. But because it tasted like that artificial chickeny kind of roast chicken flavor, then it was all right. But it's when things are too similar to meat now, it kind of it puts me off. Whereas where I first went plant based, and when I first went vegan, because when I went plant based, I went whole foods. But when I first went vegan, I started eating quite a lot of mock meat, and I quite enjoyed replicating that texture and that taste. And now I'm like, yeah, I want to replicate a doner kebab or a chicken kebab or a curry, but I don't necessarily need the flavor and the texture anymore. It's more a case of what do I chuck in this curry instead of chicken. Well, I don't think like that anymore. I just think about like what would complement it quite well. And for me now, curry, anyways, chickpea and sweet potato every single time. Um, but like I say, yeah, the only time I have mock meat is when I'm having a burger, and that's just because I tend to find that vegan burgers aren't the same texture as what cow flesh burgers are. And obviously they're nowhere near the same taste. But that doesn't mean to say that they're not great in their own right. I mean, Tammy never used to eat burgers at all before she went vegan. But now it's usually her that suggests having one because the flavors and textures are different and we appreciate them differently now. But yeah.
Oh, you muted yourself. Is that intentional?
Yeah, I was cracking a can open. I didn't think it would be very appropriate.
That's all right. I didn't know if you muted yourself mid-sentence.
So, honestly, before both of you connected with the ethics, would you ever have thought of thinking of beans, rice, lentils, chickpeas as exotic and flavoursome, and actually getting excited when you see a can in the press?
So I watched Game Changers and went plant-based. I'm not going to say, I said I went vegan at the time, but obviously I had a different connection with the word. It was a diet in my head back then, just like 99% of the rest of the general public now. So I went plant-based because I'm selfish and I want to live forever and I want to see me great grandkids get married. So I thought, like, if eating just plants, like whole food plants, cutting out the oil and the salt, because I went like proper, like full on whole food plant based. If doing all of that can enable me to live longer and I can still eat things that I enjoy, then I'm going to do it. So we give it a whirl. I've got Tammy to watch Game Changers as well. Ironically, this is off the back of going to a barbecue, by the way, and having a conversation about Game Changers. So we went whole food plant based right at the beginning. So we went from eating no fiber to having like 150 grams a day, and we turned into like the worst science experiment that you've ever seen. So, but what I will say is, I mean, then we connected with the ethics. To a point, I would say that we've probably connected more the welfare than the ethics. And ironically, that's when we started to consume a little bit of the mock meat stuff.
Yeah.
Because we weren't doing it for health anymore. We were doing it for a selfless reason. And the health benefit was potentially just a happy byproduct. And I will say that if it was just a diet, then we wouldn't have lasted. I know that for a fact. We wouldn't still be eating a whole food plant-based diet if we hadn't connected the ethics. We would have lost, because we did. We lost about 1.5 stone in about 2 months. Not that we were eating a particularly crap diet to begin with, and we hadn't really reduced the amount of, like, consciously reduced the amount of calories we were having, but the volume of food we were eating was keeping us full, and we just weren't consuming the same amount of calories. And then we started eating the mock meat and stuff, and it wasn't all the time, but the weight started creeping back on. Not much, but we put on, I think we both lost about a stone and a half, and we probably crept on about another half a stone back on. So we never went all the way back up. But yeah, like I say, if we hadn't connected to the ethics, we definitely would have went back to eating animal products and exploiting animals by now. Because it would have been a fad diet. We would have got bored of it. I would have maybe missed the flavor of animal products. Because let's face it, when you're eating whole food plant based, it ain't the same. You know what I mean? Like a bean burger is not a beef burger, and a cashew nut sauce isn't cheese. You know what I mean? So it's like we would have. I'm 100% confident that if we'd not made the connection and done it for more selfless reasons, that we would have went back to consuming animal products.
No, it was when you were talking about the like the chickpea curry and stuff. I actually started saliva tighten. I was like, that sounds absolutely amazing, and it just brought me back to about 4 years ago when I'd listened to other people talking about whole food plant based diet, and I was like, in my mind thinking, oh, them poor people, how why would they eat something so bland and so no way, you need meat products there. That you have to have some sort of, and it was interesting from just my own viewpoints of how I used to view certain types of foods to how I view them now, and it's completely like 180 degrees for me anyway.
I agree. It's like when people talk about like how boring a vegan, like a plant-based diet sounds, especially if you're whole foods, because like I say, a lentil bolognese doesn't sound as exciting, does it? Let's face it. Because the first time, I mean, I was blending up mushrooms before we used lentils, and like Tammy was like, "Oh, let's use lentils," and I was like, "Oh, it tastes like broth." And obviously, lentils don't taste of anything really. Chuck an OXO beefless stock cube in there, and you've got something that resembles meat, has a similar texture. Damn sight from a health point of view, you've got next to no saturated fat in there, apart from the small amount of olive oil or whatever it is that you use to fry the onions and stuff off. And you could water saute them if you wanted to. Um, that's just Tammy wrecking the kitchen. If you heard that.
You gonna pay for that one?
Yeah, I mean, personally, there's more passion now with what I eat and what I cook than probably at any point before. But I still don't give a shit about food. It still bores me, it really does. I do enjoy my food more than I did before and all that kind of stuff. But I still don't have that like passion that you two are both speaking about.
Yeah,
Just
Georgie,
food is just
Georgie,
literally like to a purpose. I eat when I'm hungry to make sure that I can continue. That's pretty
yeah,
much it.
Georgie's
Yeah.
fighting to herself there. She's the exact same as you, Andy. She doesn't.
I
Yeah,
You
I
know,
eat.
mean, I mean, I love both of you guys' passion. I love when you make videos or whatever if you're cooking or even just talking about it and listening. But I don't have it. Even like listening to you two, I don't want to jump in and go, "Yeah, I made this." I just sat here like just listening. I just don't have that in me at all. Literally, just eat to survive.
yeah, yeah. I'm starting to become like that now. Like I was looking at lentils, and like we've gone on this bolognese mushroom lentil buzz for the last few
Well,
weeks,
we always liked
and
it, but you never liked it,
I
and now
never
you like
liked it
it.
because I was always like, oh, it needs that kind of, the faux meat or whatever in there. But now I'm like, let's add in more lentils, and I'm not looking at it from like a taste point of view. I'm looking at it from a nutrition point of view, and thinking of all them good nutrients is actually making me want it more. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah. I
weird
mean, I
one. I'm
mean, I
no
mean,
longer
a
looking for
perfect
the.
example that I was thinking about was I can't even remember what it was now, but think about like those burgers or whatever it was that you told me about from Lidl. It took me about 6 weeks to finally get round to going and actually like buying one to try it. Whereas normally, like I see these people every day where someone's like, "Where did you get this?" I'm going like to Farm Foods right this minute. I'm in the car. It's like I just don't feel that at all. It's just like, well, if I pass in, if I'm actually there, I'll have a look. Like, I don't have that desire about food at all. I really don't. And
Yeah,
I,
I'm not,
I
I mean,
understand that some people do. That's why, like, it's a nice balance that we have on these lives sometimes, where
yeah,
everyone's
like,
just
I,
like,
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people for food is, it's a pleasure, isn't it? I mean, Fiona Oakes, I don't know if people in here know who Fiona Oakes is, but
yeah,
she
yeah,
literally says that food is fuel. So she's more like you, Andy, to be fair,
yeah.
where
That's
it's a
pretty much
case of,
that's literally more or less my relationship with it.
yeah,
I know I have to eat X amount to make sure that I can function and do the things that I need to do, and that's really as simple as it is. If it came in a tablet form, that would suit me better because it means I haven't got to cook and I haven't got to wash up.
Yeah, and that's probably the right way to view food. As in, it's not. Georgie was just saying this there in the mute. It shouldn't be about pleasure. It should be about sustainability and
Yeah,
survivability
yeah,
and energy.
I mean, no, don't get me wrong, obviously. Sometimes, if we have like a takeaway or we go out for dinner or even sometimes when I cook, I mean, I don't not enjoy my food. I'm not just like shoveling muesli down my throat or something. It's like just its function. I mean, I do enjoy everything that I eat, but what I mean is I've got no passion about taking a photo of that and showing everyone or making a video about it or even talking about what I had for dinner. It's like it was just literally a means to an end for me.
Yeah, it'd be kind of right in saying our society maybe fetishizes food.
It does. It does. Look at how much
And
of social media is dominated by pictures of people's plates. Like the first thing most people do now, if they go out for dinner or even at home, is take photos of their food. And I mean, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. I'm just saying, but look how big that is. Look how big like independent online food reviewers have come. They're all over the place.
yes,
um, yeah, I mean, veganism obviously isn't a diet, but it's probably one of the biggest changes you'll make, but it's also the biggest connection with animals that you'll probably have as well. And for me, that is definitely the case. So once I stopped consuming animal products and was no longer part of the issue, if you will, and I'd seen the exposés and I'd seen footage and all this sort of stuff. And I was one of these people who's always like, well, if you can't watch it, you shouldn't eat it. But once I wasn't eating them anymore and I watched. Um, I think it was Dominion, but I still thought, well, that's Australia and America. That's not here. I watched Land of Hope and Glory, and that's the one that did it for me. Because I was like, that is here, and that is high welfare, and that is the normal process. And I looked at the standards, and I looked at the legislation. Um, from a welfare point of view, I made the connection there, and then, and I honestly think it's because I was no longer consciously contributing towards it, so that subconscious defense mechanism never flared up and I actually saw it for what it was. And And then obviously since then, I've made more of a connection with justice and rights, to be fair. But yeah, it's funny because I mean, like we go off for a meal, and the first thing Tommy wants to do is take a photograph of everything. I'm not as much that. It's more a case of when I've created something myself that I'm proud of, I want to kind of share it with everyone and then share the recipe with everyone. But it's because food is the first connection most people make, and because food's the biggest change you'll make in your lifestyle, realistically. I think it's important to show people that actually you can eat rice and beans, but you can eat it and have a much better experience than you would consuming exploited animals if you were the right person to do that. Because I'm
Yes.
very aware that some people just really, like they eat food, they enjoy food, they crack on. Or I mean, very much like me, I mean, my food is very rarely photogenic. Like, I buy wholemeal burger buns from Aldi and they look like someone sat on them. So I'm like, I'm not going to take a photograph of my burger like that. If I'm I'll generally speaking buy like better quality products if I know I'm going to take a photograph of it to share. But
You're really selling that picture of Aldi buns there, just so you know.
yeah, oh mate,
Yeah,
honestly,
they might hire you for marketing.
yeah, genuinely right. I don't know what it is. Right, it's only the wholemeal ones. They must be slightly softer. So next time you're in Aldi, have a look. There's like they do wholemeal and they also do like white buns. They're slightly bigger than a sandwich bun, and they generally speaking come stacked on top of each other. So in the packet, it's like you've got two buns on top of two buns. Um, Genuinely look at the white ones, and you'd be like, yeah, they look pretty cool. And then look at the wholemeal ones. I buy wholemeal because well, it's slightly healthier, obviously, but it's mainly because Tammy's got a very, very slight wheat intolerance, so it prevents her from flaring up. But genuinely, the wholemeal ones look like someone has sat on the entire box.
You'd have a business in opening up a YouTube, brutal, honest reviews, and it's just you there with a load of
Yeah,
Aldi and little
well,
produce going, shit,
it's
tastes
like
like shit, this is shit.
yeah, it tastes amazing, but it looks like someone's kicked it across the fucking floor.
Oh, I missed this.
That's the problem with the fruit and veg market. Nobody wants the ugly
Yeah,
veg.
no, I
And now
agree.
you're moving on to fucking bread rolls or burger
Yeah,
buns.
yeah. There'll be wonky bread rolls next. The
But
bloody
no,
ones
I
to be
mean
in
that's
Aldi.
that's a that's a key point, like about wastage. I mean, just in bread alone, think of how many like if you ever go into like a Tesco Express or anything like that, like say at, I don't know, quarter to 11, 15 minutes before they shut, you have a look around and every shelf is full, right? Because it's like a marketing thing. It's like to trick your mind. If you walk
Yeah,
into a shop just before they close and all the shelves are empty, you want to go somewhere else that's got more options. Whereas if you walk into a shop and all the shelves are full, it gives you that impression that you've got loads of choice, right? Which is what people want. So they constantly keep the shelves stocked with bread that they know potentially is only going to go out of date and go in the bin. But like just bread alone, think of how much is wasted and chucked in a bin. Just bread, not factor in anything else. And then after that, start thinking about places like Subway, pizza shops, burger joints, anywhere that does fresh salad, fresh ingredients, where they make your own sandwich, make your own pizza, make your own baguette, make your own kebab, anything like that. And how much are they throwing away every single day?
yeah.
It's insurmountable amounts of food that like could literally feed families for a week that we're chucking in the bin.
Isn't it
I was
something like
about to say,
30% of all food produced goes to waste or something stupid like that? It might
Yeah,
even be a
and I mean
higher
the other thing
percentage.
that I was talking to Roger about this today. We were going to bring it up on the show, but obviously he's gone. You take something like following on from the bread. You take something like pre-made sandwiches that like every shop and every petrol station and everywhere sells. Right? You genuinely think that all the staff at the end of the night are opening that cellophane and emptying the bread into one place and putting the plastic into another? No, they're not. So none of that stuff is being recycled. Like people genuinely believe that recycling is having this massive difference, but have no idea how huge of a percentage that all their plastic milk bottles that they haven't washed out properly that have now gone mouldy, that ain't getting recycled. No one's cleaning
No,
that
it's not.
shit. That's going in the bin. All of that
Yeah,
ends up at landfill. Probably 80% of the stuff in your recycling bin ends up in landfill because unless it's impeccably clean, it's had the label pulled off in every shape or form, it's got
yeah.
no lid on it, and all these other specifications, no one's doing that shit. Because like
Yeah,
I remember I wrote a thing on my old Facebook account, so I can't find it, but I could remake the video based on the same point. That I remember asking the Green Party to lobby for these recycling plants to incorporate some sort of pressure washing machine that cleaned every fucking item that came through the doors, so that everything that was sent there that can be recycled was recycled, rather than 70% of it getting sent to landfill because you haven't got a washing facility. How much is this going to cost to implement? Definitely not as much as it's costing us to get rid of all this shit. So, like, just campaign for something like that and make huge changes. Not interested. Don't want to do that. But yeah,
yeah.
honestly,
Don't forget,
the
like,
food wastage and the fact that that food wastage means that those items are not recycled is fucking enormous, massive.
yeah, and don't
Just
forget that
so niggas
I
alone. I
always
mean,
come
if we
back to
sat
this
here and
too.
thought about it, think of all like the tomatoes, pack of 6 tomatoes from Tesco out of date, go in the bin with the cellophane on.
Yeah, and all the recyclable material within that as well.
Exactly that. Like all of this stuff, it's not even being composted. It's just being binned.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and it doesn't just add to landfill. It's actually quite problematic when you put like biodegradable food waste in landfill. It doesn't decompose properly, and it's
Well,
actually
the
quite
other thing
harmful.
as well is right. What do landfills usually have thousands and thousands of living very close to them? Birds and other wildlife, right? Well, how
yeah,
dangerous is plastic to ingest?
Yeah,
So you know, if they're pecking through this cellophane or chewing through this cellophane to get to the sandwich, then they're risking. Like, there's so many things that we could stop, but we're not even doing a single thing about. We're not even talking about it. It's like people just think that putting some stuff in a green bin, that's it, that's enough done, problem solved. It's a perfect example, really, of why single issue campaigns are pointless as fuck.
yeah. I
Because
remember.
that's in most people's mind, that's recycling fixed. Same as like, well, I use I use a recyclable straw now, a paper straw, so that's the ocean fixed. Like, and it really it creates this illusion in people's minds that the problem's done, that they haven't got to do anymore.
Yeah, I remember from the 90s there was an advert. It's always stuck with us. Seabirds getting caught up in beer. You know the plastic rings on beer
Oh yeah,
cans.
yeah, yeah, like the 6 pack things. I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like telling everybody to make sure that they tear them up. And I used to do that. I still do. Well, seeing that, to be fair, most of them come with cardboard now. But it's like before I was vegan, I was doing this. It's like I'm not being funny, but this is probably like, a droplet in the ocean.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, just on that note alone, right? So the solution was the fact that these ring, I don't even know what you call them, but like can holder things are an issue that needs fixing. Instead of fixing it, the public need to make
yep,
this extra effort
yep,
now to say if the company's doing anything at all. Because at
yep,
the end of the day, even if you chop them up, they're still hazardous to anyone that eats them
yep.
or whatever. They still take 150 years to dissolve.
If
So
not,
there's
if
still a
not more.
problem that they were an issue always, and they just looked for an easy way out because they didn't want to spend any money or make any changes. Does that not remind you of all the industries now? Like, do we not see why this doesn't work?
And there was a scary statistic. We when James was little, we had him in cotton nappies, and I looked at a statistic on the fact that every nappy ever created from the dawn of disposable nappies is still in existence in its full form because of the
Yeah,
length of
absolutely.
time it takes for a nappy to
Yeah,
decompose.
it's absolutely crazy time, isn't it? Absolutely
Blew my
insane
mind.
time.
It's been like
And I mean,
120 years.
that's another thing that Ian's just mentioned that made me think about it. You know, when they brought in this huge sort of wide scale changes, and let's just think of like McDonald's, Burger King, all of these kind of places that went from using plastic straws one day to using the paper ones. What happened to all those plastic straws?
Yeah, but not just that
What
though.
happened to the millions and millions and millions of them that sat in boxes in every fast food place all over the world or whatever? Where are they now?
We're now using paper straws that make it taste like you're drinking your Coca-Cola through paper mache because of one turtle that had a straw stuck up their
Yeah,
nose
and
on a
I mean,
video.
a great example of how shit they are as well is last year I was driving, and that's why I know how far the retreat is because I was driving to the retreat where Ronnie's going tomorrow, and it's like 4 hours, 20 minutes from here roughly. And about halfway through the journey, I went to drink from my drink, and I couldn't understand why it weren't working, and it's because the straw had got so wet that
Decomposed.
it had dissolved into the drink, and so all I had now was the top bit of the straw that wasn't in there. So,
Well,
like, I mean,
I suppose.
if we're going to replace something, at least, and now, constantly, if ever I go anywhere, I've got a metal one that I take that I
Do you
just
know? Do you know what
use
the
all the
most?
time.
Do you know the most ironic thing is about this though? The cup is coated in fucking plastic.
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous. Which is
Like,
why the cup doesn't leak and everything else. Why the cup doesn't like dissolve as quickly as the paper straws do. So this is really stupid. And the lid, don't forget the
yep,
lid that they
yeah, yeah.
poke the straw through. Yeah, so
And
I know
Ian,
it's really stupid. And then
Ian
people
in
will
the
go to
chat's
like
just kind
say
of
McDonald's and have a fillet of fish.
yeah, and then Ian in the chat's obviously just highlight the fact that 80% of plastic in the oceans is from fishing
Fishing
nets.
nets, yeah, absolutely
So
is. Yeah.
if you actually give a shit about plastic in the ocean, the best thing you could do is remove fish or seafood,
In in
sea life,
in
I should say,
fact,
from your diet.
I don't know if I've actually got it. There was a video on one of my old duet accounts that I duetted. I think they were either Danish or Swedish fishermen. That basically one of their trawler nets. It wasn't an enormous one because it wasn't an enormous boat, but one of their nets had pulled up like loads and loads of what looked like plastic, like tarpaulin kind of stuff. And they
Hmm.
looked at it and just basically cut the net with a knife. Like, oh, that's too much fucking hassle for us to sort out. Just let it all
Yep,
go.
put it
And
off
I
and leave it
just
in there.
like it just epitomized everything.
It's like when you see whales wash up on shore and cut them open and see what's in the stomach and they're just full of carrier bags and because well yeah carrier bags and fishing nets because
Yeah.
obviously like sperm whales and stuff just open their mouth and just
Yeah,
sift.
absolutely. Everything comes in, and obviously they've got that
Yep.
suction as well that
Hmm.
brings everything to them.
Yep.
So,
Did
like
you, did you ever
things
see
like
the
carrier bags, obviously they're prime candidates to get sucked in because they don't offer any resistance.
It's not just that. I
did you
mean,
ever
things like animals like sharks and stuff consume carrier bags because they
Yeah.
think that they're other fish like sea life.
Well, even I mean, carrier bags are even a threat to like foxes and stuff. I mean, I've seen a
Yep.
couple of the posts that get shared. I think actually the more recent one is a balloon rather than a carrier bag. But quite often you'll find a fox that's just no longer with us, and there's no visible signs of why. And when they've done an autopsy, it's because they've consumed a piece of plastic or rubber.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you ever see that picture of the albatross family and they'd all died and started decomposing, but all their stomach contents were full of like Bic lighters and clipper
Yeah, I
lighters and
saw it.
stuff?
I saw it. It's absolutely horrendous. That yeah, it's disgusting. I actually thought that one
It's
picture.
everything.
I thought it was someone had photoshopped it to make a point before I realised that they were genuine. Like I
Yeah,
thought it was like an ads campaign or something. But yeah, when I actually realised that, absolutely. I mean, that it's literally like half of their insides were made up of plastic.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
abhorrent. It's
absolutely, yeah. And that's us, that's all us. But the beach is
yeah,
fucking full of litter every time I've ever been to a beach. And a lot of that litter you can't actually see until you start like moving your hands or your feet in amongst the sand or the stone and you
Yeah.
realise how much is buried underneath the first layer.
Or
yeah,
it's like you'll see what looks like a really interesting looking pebble, and you look at it, you really look at it and think, oh, that's just a piece of polished glass.
Yeah. You see that a lot too. And nub ends all over the place.
Yeah. Nubbins all over the place, did you say there?
Yeah, nub ends is in like fag ends. They're one of the
Oh,
things that
right.
don't seem to degrade. I mean,
See,
that's one of like fondest memories of like being a kid was like making a sandcastle with like 100 nub ends in the top as like turrets.
Jesus.
and a nubbin, is I heard it, is a third nipple, which is why I questioned it.
Oh, okay, I've never heard that. Oh, no, I'm saying nub end, not nubbin.
Oh, right.
Like fag end, like the filter.
Yeah.
That's
Cigarette butt.
Cigarette butt, yeah.
Yeah, I've got to say, I have
Oh,
memories
I
of
didn't know that
using
about a nubbin. I'll keep that in mind.
nubbin eye. It's I think it's a medical term for a useless
I was
growth.
about to say I'm going to start calling people that come in and troll the chat a nubbin. Perfect name for them.
Yeah, third nipple. I'm
A
sure the
useless
definition of
attachment that we've got no choice but to put up with. Brilliant.
yeah, I'm sure that the definition of a nubbin is that it's a useless growth or something like that.
Yeah.
I
Um,
know two of them. There was a
but
curly headed one on that live earlier.
yeah, I am also the proud owner of a nubbin. I'm not, I'm
Really?
not, I'm not, I'm not share it, but yeah, I've got a third nipple. It's got teeth
So
and
what
everything.
actually is a third nipple? Is it actually a nipple or is it like a mole
Well,
that just
I I can only speak from my own personal experience. Mine's not as big as me other nipples. I'm not like a fucking cat.
has it got the
Um,
round bit as well?
yeah, it's like if you can imagine what a baby's nipple looks like, and it's
Right.
just underneath me left nipple.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Kev, you're just gonna have to go
Yeah,
live.
that's actually quite interesting. I wonder
You're
if
gonna
that's
have to
like
zoom the
left
camera
over
in.
though from once upon a time where like there were three nippled apes.
Do you
Three
reckon
nipple.
do you reckon the dairy industry's looking at Kev going,
Yeah,
oh,
well, that's
oh, I
what I
have an
was
idea.
thinking. I mean, to be fair, I'm surprised that they've not added more teats to the udder.
I'm not being funny, mate. Do you not think someone's probably already thought of that
They're
and not had
probably
many
already
much
working
success?
on that, to be fair, yeah. In fact, actually, that brought me on to the other thing we were supposed to talk about today. So all the potential resistance to Rishi Sunak's changes to the legislation of chicken farms, but all the issue is about the fact that they're Frankenstein chickens. It's not the fact that this is happening to them or any of this shit. It's the fact that these chickens that grow far too fast are going to continue to grow real fast. And that's the only problem, apparently. Nothing to do with the fact that they're used, full stop. That won't change no matter what. Even if Rishi Sunak had put this bill through, it would only change how they're bred. Nothing else. Wouldn't change the life. But apparently we should be sad that this hasn't gone through. And I just think it's a great example of like how lost we are as a movement.
So I'm a little bit behind on this, which is rare because I'm actually usually quite into me politics. But
I can't
that's
remember
because
the name of
I
the act that he's repealed.
what's really sad is when I'm stood doing me dishes, I'm generally speaking listening to question time. But at the minute, I've been listening to audiobooks. So what have I missed? What's not been passed, or
I
what was
can't
the
remember the
legislation
name.
that was
Oh, Roger's
suggested?
just come back, so maybe he might know the act. I can't think what the name of the act is. But essentially the critic is that Rishi has repelled or refused this act, this piece of legislation that was going to go forward. But all the media coverage about it is just essentially alluding to the Frankenstein element of the chickens. Nothing about actually what they go through or the fact that this happens at all. It's all about that we're opposed to the fact that they grow at the rate that they do, which I've never heard anyone talk about really.
Small.
But I think it just shows a great example of how the media have got no idea what our position is, and we don't
So
help.
So if they're talking about Frankenstein style chickens, I'm assuming they're not chopping bits off other chickens to sew onto other chickens. So
No, no,
we're
no. They're
talking about
literally talking about. So the Frankenstein part relates to the fact that they grow to a rate where the legs cannot hold them at a speed which obviously is far faster than normal. Hello, Roger. Welcome back.
isn't that what
Hello.
we already have?
Isn't it something like 2+ kilos in like 36 days?
I can't remember the exact word, and I should have done more research on this. My bad.
So
But it's just
was
something I
the
wanted to mention.
proposition of legislation to make them grow faster or slower? Not that I'm saying that either of those two things are better, but you know what I mean? Like not what we'd be advocating for, but was it that they're talking about the fact that these chickens would have grown faster or the chickens that we have need to grow slower?
I'm not sure whether the legislation actually was to do with the growth rate. That's just how the media have spun
Uh,
it. That's
right.
what our position is. I think
I
I
mean,
think the legislation was actually a bit more inclusive than that. I know there was a few things involved, but I think it's essentially how the media have spun it that we're pissed off because now we're going to have more Frankenstein chickens. Not the fact that this happens. As though we would have
but
been quite happy if they just said, right, we're going to regress this breeding
but I mean,
progress.
the media always spin it onto a welfareist position, no matter what it is. It can be as rights based as possible. As soon as a media outlet gets a hold of it, they'll take one sentence from an entire speech that you have prepared for them in to release to them with reference to whatever it is that you have done, and they will use one sentence from that is a welfare position, that relates to treatment rather than use.
It's a
So
question of doing a lot of work with them, because I was brought into one of these meet your meet ones just to do the media, and we actually set up my van as a kind of media centre right outside the farm and all this, but you have to be very very careful, but you almost like have to state what your position isn't in terms of what you say to them. We're not saying this is the worst thing we've ever seen. We're not saying that this is we picked this because it's particularly bad. We're saying that this is just what is, and if you go down the road, it'll be exactly the same. So you have to lay it out very kind of carefully, so they can't
yeah,
say it wrong unless they were to totally ignore what you say.
yeah.
That was a quick cat nap.
Species language, Andy.
In learning species of language, it's a great group. I recommended it to
Why
Jordan.
is catnap species? There's nothing derogatory there.
It's usually me making a complete idiot of myself when it comes to using speciesist language, to be fair, even though I try my
It's,
hardest not to.
it's better than calling them things, to be fair.
I thought
Yeah.
yeah, but I thought a catnap was something that literally it's like 5 minutes and they're rejuvenated, so to speak. That was the whole point of it, that it was very quick, short-lived. All right, very quick power nap.
Yeah, but
But power
cats.
sounds oppressive to me. There's nothing, can't we?
I was only messing
As
on
well,
the.
to be fair, I can't imagine a less accurate term. But I mean, my cat does not power nap. My cat sleeps like 99% of his
Yeah,
life.
I was going to say that as well. There's no such thing as
He
a cat nap,
is,
is there?
yeah, like when he's not asleep, he is awake. But when he's not awake, he is the laziest animal I have ever met.
Maybe it refers to how many they have, as in they have 9 naps because they're a cat.
Well, yeah, and I would also imagine that it probably predates
One for every
domesticated
life.
cats sleeping all day on sofas, having tins of food opened and prepared for them every time they walk in the kitchen and make a sound. So,
I
I
haven't.
mean,
Have you ever seen a
it
David
could well
Attenborough
predate that.
documentary? Like, lions are the most sexist animals in the animal kingdom. The males just go to sleep all day while the females go out and work.
Yeah. Which is funny. I mean, do you not think sometimes that when you look at kind of like how society's been formed for centuries, if not thousands of years, that they actually looked at nature and said, "Fuck that, let's do the opposite."
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
within lots of nature. I mean, it's the same with birds and stuff. Like the females sit on the nest and all the stuff. They're the ones that do most of the work in the relationship, and the males just kind of like lays around. Their job is like a protector more than anything else. Whereas like it's almost like the males of the human species looked at that and thought, "Whoa, we need to do the other. We need the opposite of that. We need to be in control of absolutely everything all of the time."
But when you look at hunter-gatherer, like tribes, like unmolested tribes and stuff, the majority of the work is still done by like the females in the tribes. Like the men will go out and they'll go and gather. Well, the men will go out and hunt. The women will gather. They'll wash. They'll clean. They'll cook. They'll
Yeah,
look
I mean,
after the stuff.
I
All
mean,
of
at the end of the day, that's essentially how we would still be if the women of those tribes never actually stand up and say, "Hang on a minute, we want to be counted as individuals," like
yeah.
which essentially is the same as what we would have still. Yeah,
And then like you rewind 200 years, and the whole male human population was surprised when women naturally started to rebel and want to have, a voice and have their position put forward and be valued. It's like,
yeah.
well,
What you
actually, if you
mean? You
look
mean like the way that farmers are surprised when like
at
cows, stomp on them or charge at them or anything else, and so they can't believe what's happened, and it's still their fault though. By the way, they're still nasty or shit mums.
yeah,
But no,
yeah, it's
you're
not.
totally right. Yeah, there's always that. I can't believe it after everything we've done for you. Like that attitude is a joke. But that's the society that we've got. And
Yeah.
we still see this. Although women are obviously have got far more rights and respect than they have ever had at any point in history. It's still not the complete article. We see it even within the movement.
Yeah, I mean, even with the protection and the laws and the legislation and the rights that are in place, women are still daily oppressed, like unofficially, if you will, like just like just in everyday life, like women are um what's the word? Not idolized, not symbolized. What's the objectified?
Yeah.
Um, and kind of assumed to be of a lesser intelligence because they're actually pleasing on the eye or whatever it is. Like women are oppressed a lot compared to their male counterparts, or they're oppressed by their male counterparts for the most part, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely, and they're also made to feel that they should oppress themselves in order to fit
Yep,
in too.
yep, I agree.
As though that's still the expectation. You've got freedom, but we still expect this of you.
Yeah, you've got freedom, just don't push it too far.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it is there, and it really does demonstrate that even with essentially abolition, the education is still key. Absolutely,
Yeah,
and it is painstaking. It is, it's going to take a serious amount of time. Just look at how long it's already taken with other movements and other forms of education. But it's just about being consistent, and we don't do that often enough.
yeah, exactly that.
Anyways. Right, I'm only gonna go to a 10 anyway. So
Yeah, I was
Do you,
gonna say I'll be jumping off soon because my curry's nearly finished.
yeah, that's fine. The dog's been sat watching me for the last 10-15 minutes, so I don't want to make him wait too much longer.
Hi guys.
Hey, hey.
Ari, Georgie?
I just thought
Hey, Dan.
a quick one on that subject about girls.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of like from the moment girls can talk and walk, we're always told to behave and be respectful and be ladylike and keep our mouth shut, basically. We shouldn't show anger and we shouldn't show aggression, or we should just like be quiet and behave ourselves. Um, and that is how it is taught mainly. As far as I'm concerned, I'm trying to do that very differently with my daughter. Um, but yeah, I think we need to speak up a lot more.
I agree, 100%. The most powerful tool, I suppose, or the most powerful thing that any human possesses is the power of their voice. And male or female, or um, other gender specific, um, no one should ever be muted or told that their voice um, is not worthy. Because, like I say, that even from a very young age, I'm teaching my two boys that their voice is by far their most powerful weapon within their arsenal. Because the ability to be able to be heard is by far more powerful than any other physical attribute that they have.
Yeah.
So having very well educated, very well spoken females in any walk of life is absolutely 100% imperative to ensure that, yes, they have women have rights and stuff now, but it's imperative to make sure that, like Andy was saying, it's like the oppression can still be there. It's imperative to make sure that it is reduced and it goes. Um,
But the thing seems to be that it's the mothers handing this down to their daughters. It's the great grandmothers to the nannies to the mums to the younger generation, and it's the women that I find are holding other women back because of how they feel they are a part of a man's society or a man's world.
yeah, I mean,
We have our place basically, and it's taught. And I think we are getting to generations now where we're like, no, fuck that shit. And that
yeah,
needs to be, rather than parents turning around and going, I think it's quite scary that you can try to want to protect your young girls and your daughters so much that you, without even realizing it, you're trying to get them to fit in, and you are, subtly silencing them without even realizing it.
yeah, I agree, and I think as much as it's women will talk and men will not. I think that a lot of women will also criticize and compete, um, whereas men don't as much. Um, but I absolutely agree with everything you said. I think it's culture that's passed down, isn't it? Um,
Oh, definitely.
but
Well, I
yeah, I
mean,
think
yeah, yeah, and I would potentially say that culture that's passed down is potentially why so many women feel that they have to compete.
yeah, 100%. And I would say on
Because
that, I would
because
say that we
just being themselves is never this. I mean, George was right. It's like maybe in another 30, 40 years we will see very, very different things, but we've still got plenty of generations that were brought up from a very young age, especially anyone that's in like their 60s, 70s, or 80s. Just because there's been changes in the law and everything else, it's not going to forget everything that there was drilled into them as a kid. They're going to forget the way that we're brought up and all of that stuff. That's not suddenly going to change because they've changed some legislation somewhere. All of
And
that's
that's
still going to
passed down.
exist. So yeah, that's still going to have been passed down to their daughters, their granddaughters, their nieces, anyone they interact with at work. So it's still going to take some serious time, but it's having that consistent position that yeah, okay, we've managed to change this and we've managed to change that, but it's not complete yet because this still exists. This oppression still continues.
Yeah.
I think it's a very complicated issue, actually. There was some interesting sociological research about girl power, which, although the Spice Girls were kind of manufactured, I think all those songs were probably written by men and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It did seem that they really did empower very young girls to, want things that weren't traditional and to be, much more vocal and stuff. But of course, the other side of that is the fact that they were dressed up in hot pants and.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Yeah.
You mean to
But
say
do you
the
not think
feminists
that
should
plays
be
into
wearing
kind of what I mentioned earlier, where it's like you've been given this freedom, i.e., you are allowed to have as much thought or opinion or action as you want, as long as it still falls within these parameters that are expected of you.
Yeah, as long as you look pretty and you say the things that we want to
You
hear.
can have any career you want as long as it's like sexualized in some way and you wear a nice dress and yeah.
And that's what I was going to say before when Georgie was talking about obviously culture and you kind of lead on. I was like, for me, I think we need more people like Angela Rayner. We need inspirational females who are leading the way, showing that actually you don't have to be this pin-up to be respected and successful, but we also need powerful men, influential men who also kind of support that as well. Like it's like you can be whatever you want to be. You can aspire to be any walk of life that you want to be, and we just need more inspirational people to endorse the fact that you can do this without dropping those social norms, without the expectation that you will put yourself out there as a trophy, as a symbol, as an object, and still accomplish things. Your voice can still be heard and you can still be successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or we could just make it a norm that men are judged 1 to 10 like women are, and so you've got to have it tattooed on your forehead or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what's your take on that, Roger? Obviously, you've got quite a few sort of more years on than any of us. So, I mean, how much would you say that you've seen change in that regard?
Well, it depends. It's a mixed bag in the sense of change in what sense? You see, the point is sometimes the change.
Well, I mean, just for example, so obviously you touched on the Spice Girls, but that's only like early 90s.
Yeah.
What about before that?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, I used to teach feminist theory, and of course, in 1969, that's when you got second wave feminists. The first wave was suffragists and suffragettes, but then you started getting the radicals and the Marxists and the black feminists. That was all seen as the second wave, and that was the kind of women's liberation movement. The burn the bra type thing, and the really kind of standing up for your rights. But it soon got translated into liberal feminism. So you would get a lot of radicals wanting to destroy something like patriarchy and the culture. So this is got some interesting parallels with veganism. But then you get a bigger group of people who wanted to work within the system, and so they thought that they can make reforms within the system. And again, you've got to think about things like Animal Rising, and the kind of moderate groups that think that you can get this welfare reform, then that welfare reform, and then all that kind of stuff. Other people think no, you need to have a cultural revolution.
Yeah.
So there is an interesting kind of parallel there. And then it got very confusing. Then after that, when you got third and fourth wave feminism, where you got things like ideas that sex work was empowering, which the second wave wouldn't accept. They would see that as oppression. Those kind of things, and that would then translate into things like PETA. This idea that women's sexuality is their own thing. They should express it. And if they want to take their clothes off for the animals kind of thing, that's up to them, which of course is absolutely true. But what the second wave feminists would say is, well, just consider the consequence of your action. You know, it might if you're a powerful white middle class woman expressing yourself that way, what about your kind of less powerful sisters who might be in brothels and who might be subject to a lot of things that you're not? You know, so they'd try to make a more structural thing. So as usual with things, it can get very complicated depending on where you start your analysis and where you end it, you know?
Yeah. No,
It's
that's very
interesting
good.
that, Roger, because it's like talking about obviously like the sexual empowerment and this, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, like that is absolutely your choice, but by doing that, you're also encouraging the objectifying of women. So it's like it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's I can completely see why you've got two conflicting kind of points of view there. Not you, but you know, the two different eras of the movement. Because it's like I wouldn't say don't take your clothes off if you want to, because that would almost be oppression. But it's like actually by doing that, you're then causing oppression potentially by normalizing the objectification of the female form. So it's not a straightforward kind of argument, is it?
No, well, you still got the issue, of course. Even if you think about things like, you know, these two headers on TV, the women gets judged on what they look like, whereas the men tend not to. You can have an old kind of craggy man who's been in the job for years, but you've still got to have, you know, a certain amount of kind of glamour, you know. And of course, it's not always the same. You know, I mean, you obviously get people like Joan Bakewell on Newsnight, you know, who kind of aged gracefully, and it was kind of allowed because it was a kind of a serious news program. But if it's like morning TV, that's where you see, you know, the stereotypes kind of coming in. You know, what do the viewers expect to see when they tune in? And you know, in terms of the way that women present themselves, it's got to have a certain amount of, you know, youngness, a certain amount of glamour, you know, that kind of thing, which doesn't apply to men. And of course, the other area where this is shown quite a lot is Hollywood, you know, and there's a big pressure on female stars to start to have the corrective surgery. Whereas people like, you know, your John Waynes and your Robert Redfords and that, they can, you know, end up looking pretty craggy old men, you know, like Clint Eastwood and stuff. But you don't really have that with women. So there's a different set of standards based on that.
Yeah, I remember there's a guy called Neil Sanders that wrote a book that's a bit out there. I think it's called They Control Your Mind or something like that. But he's got a chapter in there that actually discussed from research that was done. It's probably a few decades out of date now, but research that was done in the 80s and 90s, that one of the most influential forms of television, as silly as it sounds, was game shows, in terms of they kind of normalized so many things wrong. You'd normally have the young, attractive sort of person that would come out and showboat like speedboats and cars that people couldn't normally afford, but suddenly had a chance of actually owning somehow, just by answering a few questions or doing a few tasks. I mean, there was the interaction with the audience. There's all these different things. And they actually said that like game shows were actually really, really bad for normalizing stuff. And that's why
Yeah, well,
when it came to like
think about
advert revenue.
Countdown. You know both versions of
Yeah,
Countdown.
yeah.
Yeah. So you've got Rachel, whatever she's called, you know, who does the kind of
Rachel Riley, yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then before that there was
Carol
Boredom.
Vorderman.
Was it
So, yeah,
Carol?
Carol Vorderman, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, Carol Vorderman started off as being kind of like your stereotypical educated female, and then as she got older, she obviously bought into the whole
Yeah, that's
show
very true,
business stuff, didn't
actually.
she?
Yeah. But yeah,
But
I
I
remember
was
that
actually
one of the
thinking
key
like the
parts of his
generation game.
evidence was that people were paying, like companies were paying twice as much for the slots in between game shows as they were for any other part of TV. Which,
Yeah, Generation Game, Kev. That was Bruce Forsyth and some young women, wasn't it?
yeah,
It
I
was,
mean,
yeah,
how
the
many
twins,
different
didn't he?
shows could you say exactly the same thing? Bruce Forsyth and a woman that was a third his age.
But I mean, I'm not like going way back. Like I was like obviously I was born in '86, so I grew up in the kind of late '80s, early '90s. But it's like you can even argue that this was on kids' TV. So Funhouse, I can always remember fancying the two twins on Funhouse, and they were only kids. I was only 6 at the time or something, so they were older than me. But you know what I mean? Like if they were two, kind of like if they were overweight and ginger hair or what, not stereotypical blonde, slim, pretty girls, then you know what I mean? Like you would even argue that it goes right the way down in that era, down to kids' TV. And
Yeah,
even
absolutely, it does. Yeah, because it's normalizing it. It's kind of like what's the David Icke expression that I like to use? A totalitarian tiptoe. If you move too much at once, people are going to go, "Whoa, you can't do that." That's I don't want my kids watching this. But if you take baby steps, where every single year they're introduced to a little bit else, a little bit more, a little bit more. By the time they get to like
yeah,
teenagers, you can kind of dump whatever you want on them because everything else has already been normalized.
yeah,
Yeah,
So
well, I
that's how
mean,
they do
things
it. That's
things
how they
like
get away with it.
South Park and all that. I mean, that they couldn't have existed in the 70s, and conversely, things like Love Thy Neighbor couldn't
Yeah,
exist now.
absolutely. And then you can extend more so than even just individual TV shows. Look at like, so when I was a kid, things like South Park, for example, were available on Channel 4 at like 10, 11 o'clock at night when your mum and dad don't know you're awake still, right? Whereas like Max, my kid, he could put South Park into YouTube now and in 3 seconds he could watch whatever episode he wants. So it's not even just about the fact that these shows the times have changed in that way. Their availability is so much easier now as well. And I mean, I'm sure this is the same for wherever you kind of are in the Western world, so to speak. That you walk anywhere down the street and you'll see kids in pushchairs that are holding phones or tablets.
Yeah, well, you tell me. You've both got kids. What I mean, it must be parenting must be so much more worrying in the internet age.
Yeah, it
yeah,
absolutely is. I mean, there's only so much that you really can monitor. I mean, when it comes to YouTube, I have one premium account that me and we all share, which the good thing about YouTube is it has video watch history. So I've
yeah,
already got certain restrictions on it anyway that like it's a bit of a pain sometimes when I get sent
Andy,
a
the Big
video
Brother.
and I have to switch
yeah,
account to watch like a video that like is vegan related because I can't watch it on my account because the threshold
yeah.
doesn't
It's
let me
not
watch it until
appropriate.
9
Yeah, so
p.m.
you've got age restrictions and
Yes,
you
but I
know.
also have the watch history. So if somehow like he found a way of kind of getting past that, I'd know very quickly too. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean I've got some element of control there. But however, say he's like at my parents' house or goes and stays at his friend's house or even at school on his phone, I've got no control over those things.
yeah, exactly. I was going to say on the YouTube thing, I've got separate accounts set up for my two kids, but they're linked to my account. So I obviously they're on Google accounts, so I can switch on my YouTube. I can switch between the accounts and see what they've been watching.
Yeah.
Um,
This
but
this is this is Bentham's panopticon.
But also on that note, right, because this is something that I realized a little while ago when I was having a conversation with my parents. Although this is kind of like you have to do this now for exactly the reasons that we're talking about, all of this too is normalizing surveillance and getting us used to being watched and having every
yeah,
aspect of our life controlled by someone else because we do exactly the same thing to our kids.
yeah, but I suppose it's because there's a risk there, isn't there? Like, so
But
Freddie
that's but
plays
that's
like,
but that's how surveillance has always been passed. The cameras are there because there's a risk.
yeah,
The lease is
yeah,
there because there's a risk. So like it's exactly the same. It's just normalizing that yeah, it's okay if someone's watching every aspect of your life because we do that. So
yeah,
they're just like
I get
looking
that.
after us like we look after our kids. Yeah, it's all
Yeah,
normalization of the same sort of
yeah,
control. If George Orwell's sort of 1984 coming to fruition, basically.
Now and
yeah.
then some.
I mean,
Yeah, well, yeah, and then some. We're in 2024, so to speak, in George Orwell's tombs.
I was watching a YouTube video of a guy, I can't remember who it was now, some American guy, but he was interviewing this ethical hacker is what he was classed as. So this is a guy who hacks into websites and
All right, to
is
to test the security on them.
yeah, so he's got a business now doing it, but he got into it because he was alerted to a website called I don't know if I can say the word because I will get banned, but rapey.com, I think was the original website. It's been taken down and stuff now. Anyway, it was linked to a congressman in America, and it was basically just a child abuse website. and he ended up hacking into this website because he'd done all sorts of naughty stuff in the past, and then he found this website, hacked in, found all of the members' information. And there's like 330,000 people he's currently investigating through this. And it's like a 3 hour long live. I'll chuck it in one of the other chats actually, if anybody's interested in watching it. What he basically said is anywhere a child can communicate online, they are not safe.
Yeah,
So that
absolutely would agree.
that
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
was that was kind of for me. It was like Freddie plays on he plays on his in his games console on his online quite a lot, but everything's restricted so that he can only chat to friends. And if he gets a friend request, it's got to be authorized by me, and he can't send friend requests.
Yeah, I mean, did you play Habbo Hotel back in the day when you was a kid?
No, but I played that Penguin one.
Okay, so same thing, right? So the paedophiles haven't gone anywhere. They've just moved with the technology, right?
Yeah,
Like when
exactly
you
that.
think about it as an adult, Yahoo Chat, Habbo Hotel, all of
Yeah,
these things, these were like
yeah.
pedo heaven.
It's like things
And
like
now all they've done is the pedos have just got better at, blending in, so to speak, and they've moved with the technology. It was
yeah,
always there. It's
yeah.
always there.
Well, if you think about it, me and you, Andy, grew up in the chat room era. Like you
Yeah,
had online chat rooms. You didn't have private messengers or anything. You had MSN, and you might have had AIM. But
yeah.
if you wanted to go and chat, like there was a trend, wasn't there, where people would go and chat to random people in a chat room. You didn't have a clue who the hell you were chatting to, and you had was it Me? Is that what it was called? Where it was just basically a program that was just full of chat rooms. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and then obviously the evolution from that was Omegle and then chat roulette and stuff like that, where it
yeah,
would just be like random webcam meets, where
yeah,
most of them would just be a bloke with their parts hanging out. Yeah,
yeah, and
but
then
yeah, these were kids for the most part. There was no age restriction or anything else, and yeah, and I mean,
yeah,
look to continue what we're on about. We're talking about something that's like best part of 20 years ago. Well, TikTok is essentially the new one. It's a little bit
yeah, it
censored,
is.
obviously, in comparison, but it's rife with pedos, it's rife with predators, and rife with kids.
Yeah, yeah, and as much as TikTok try their best to monitor people that are under their age guidance, if you will, there's only so much they can do. If someone doesn't post anything and only is an audience member and is in a private chat, then they have got no idea how
Yeah,
old that person is.
yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Well, you're not
so
supposed to have kids on TikTok, have you?
It's
no,
14, I think, is the age limit. But
yeah,
the problem is, which is definitely something they should look to change, is it's so easy for a kid. I mean, it's as simple as if it was as simple as going to the shop and the shopkeeper goes, "What's your date of birth?" And they can just make one up and that's okay without showing
yeah,
ID. They would. Well, but that's what TikTok's allowing them to do. As long as they know that they've got to be at least 14, all that they got to do is put in that year and they're in.
yeah.
So they could be
With a
nine and have a TikTok
with
account as long as they can count to 14.
with a fake email account, and they don't have to post anything on, they don't have to put a picture on, and then they can literally, go and
Yeah,
communicate with
literally
anyone they want
within
to.
5 seconds of getting in, you can interact.
Well, even just within the movement, how many people are we aware of that have got numerous fake accounts
Yeah,
that
I
have
mean,
been set up fairly recently?
not even just fake accounts. So I've got this one. I've got the helpgoingvegan.info one, the helpgoingvegan.info/reality one, and then I've got that vegan show one, which hopefully from next Saturday I might be able to go live from because we're on 769.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's only took like 6, but I haven't tried to be fair. I don't very often post on it.
Yeah.
So I've got 5 active accounts, I think, or four,
Well,
4 active accounts, right?
Wow.
So they're not fake accounts. I sign into them every day, check the notifications, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, four, and it's not like TikTok have gone, whoa, you're only allowed one. They don't care.
yeah. It's not like TikTok will even know that these are all you. I mean, all your videos that you put on, most of them, Andy, are anonymized. They're captions and clips of
Yeah,
other people's
absolutely.
content.
Even a lot of the poem. I mean, well, pretty much, in fact, every poem. It's not got me reading it out. It's only my voice.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, you're right. Yeah, I mean, in fact, some of the other accounts, the vegan show one, for example, there's no videos of me on there. I don't even think there's any videos of me talking on there. So like, it is very anonymous.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, it's 10 o'clock. Has anyone else got anything that they want to add? Otherwise, we'll thank everyone and call it a night.
Yeah, I want to add night night, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm
To be
I'm
fair,
surprised you're still with us. I honestly thought that you'd be knackered because obviously you've done your outreach during the day. Then you've
I
had
think we
that
should.
long live that went on longer than expected and was already delayed, and then you've done this one as well. So fair
Yeah,
play.
I think Rogers went off and snorted a line of coffee. To be fair, before he came
You went and
back
did a
on.
line of nooch, did you?
No, not true. I'm here to deny that accusation.
He had his power nap.
Yeah.
And can,
I will say, Roger, however, you and Ronnie held yourselves
Yes, honestly, yeah,
incredibly well
credit, definitely, because
because,
I think that that was not only kind of like rehearsed, but I think that
yeah,
even Jordan went outside of what they'd rehearsed too. So I think you
yeah.
both did a really good job. And like
And
I said earlier, I think you really
well,
made.
well, Andy, you said you didn't get there till 25 minutes because Jordan already did like a quarter of an hour thing already
Really,
by
oh
then.
yeah, great. Graham said it was all about camp out before. I missed that. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna rewatch the
yeah,
live.
I'll have to watch
Um,
the first
I mean, that's
25 minutes.
basically the only thing that he came to talk about. And he obviously,
Which is what, I'm not going to say I told you so, but
no,
I
you did.
thought
Yeah,
that.
you did. Yeah, you did.
yeah,
Which is to be expected, yeah. He did
but
exactly what I expected him to do, except he was still more bitter about it than I thought he was.
yeah,
Well, it's that point. I mean, I've just sent you a voicemail, but basically saying that while I was on my break, you kind of think of things afterwards. And as much as I'd like to buy into David's thing about, well, we are all vegans, we all want the same thing and all that. I mean, clearly we don't. In that sense, I mean, I've never wanted to make money out of the vegan movement ever. And a lot of activists I know from back in the day, they were in poverty. A lot of them,
Yeah,
virtually didn't have anything to their name because they'd spent it on running a sanctuary or
yeah.
going around in kind of rags.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And so nothing to do with kind of wanting to have a pretty good income based on one event a year.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah, yeah, I
I
get
think
that.
the other thing to add to that as well is, like we've talked about many times, if anyone has got an understanding and a grasp fully of what the philosophy stands for and the actual history of the movement to be somewhat in a position to challenge it and change it, it's you, and you've never done anything except want it to be respected and adhered to, like,
Exactly.
whereas everyone else just wants to redefine it to suit
Yeah,
themselves.
well, everybody's asking me for my definition, and I don't have one.
Yeah, I think that was really, really, really sort of poignant. The fact that like you were probably the only person, maybe Ronnie also, but certainly you, and that was on the panel that could have been anywhere near qualified to actually give one. And you're like, I'm not interested in doing that. And
Yeah,
I think that's testament to who you are.
100%, 100%.
Well,
And the fact,
I did say that I found the exercise a little bit distasteful because it's
Yeah,
kind of like,
absolutely. And you could tell before that, you could tell by, there was a few times that you could tell that you weren't in a comfortable position because of the way
yeah,
that they were talking. But it just shows the difference. I mean, hopefully for some of those that were watching, they saw that actually if there was one distinction between the old and the new, it was respect and the lack of it.
was. I think the fact that obviously Jordan was attempting to antagonize at least Ronnie. And then Ronnie was obviously silent the entire time that he was being barraged with claims.
Yeah, but bear in
Um,
mind that's Jordan's point, right? That we
yeah,
shouldn't be attacking anyone. We shouldn't be
yeah.
personally victimizing anyone. We shouldn't be making anyone feel like shit. Oh,
But
you want
then,
to
yeah.
listen to that, yeah?
So, but then every time Ronnie spoke, Jordan was interrupting, and
Yeah.
it's like in a really becoming very emotional, which I guess, you know what I mean? But like STFU and allow someone to speak with the respect that they've shown you. That is absolutely my pet peeve when I'm trying to talk to someone and they talk over
yeah,
me
but
when I'm
I
showing them
suppose
the
from his
respect.
point of view, just to try to kind of jump the fence a little bit, I suppose, I mean, that's his sole, as far as we know, his sole form of income, or at least a major part of his income every year. And so I suppose in some senses, any threat to it or any kind of criticism of it, he's bound to take very, very kind of seriously. And I mean, like
Yeah,
he almost has got this story in his head from 3 years ago that he can say line by line. It takes him 20 minutes to get it out.
Yeah.
yeah. But
I
no,
mean,
I just,
because
yeah,
he just started pouring out of him, didn't he? Because how? And I think even David Rams is kind of going, well, this is not quite what we're supposed to be here for. And all this kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
that's what the impression that I got. That before the show had started, there'd obviously been a conversation where Jordan had said, "Look, I want to have my say," and that had been okayed. But I think even to that degree that he went above and beyond, because yeah, there was a couple of times where David was a bit like, "Oh, fucking hell," but he didn't. He still didn't interfere. Like I
No,
said earlier, it's a good job you did, because otherwise Ronnie's point wouldn't have been heard.
yeah, but it
Yeah.
didn't kind of. You see, the thing is, they'd come up with something like 9 questions or something, and Ronnie said that's far too many. We'll never get through them. And so they said, okay, well, we'll go with the generation thing first. And then Jordan said, oh well, we need to talk about the camp out second then, right? So that's got to be second. He came up with some reason why it should. I mean, I don't, why exactly it should, I don't know. But that's the only reason he was there. You see.
Yeah. Like I said to you the other week, they'd have been much better off actually getting someone else to host the debate, and it being David and George versus you and Ronnie as some sort of new school versus old school, because Jordan's input essentially was only there to market camp out. He didn't have any input to any of the conversation. He had no contribution to anything, and all he was doing essentially was just getting to the time where he could have a go at Ronnie.
Yeah, and also this thing about the old school vegans are the hunt saboteurs. Well, I mean, even George pointed out that a lot of the most vocal ones were kind of 18 years old and stuff, and so those suddenly are the old school vegans attacking the new school vegans, and so, but I mean, they're in the same generation. In fact, some of them presumably younger than Jordan, so it all got a bit messy in the end.
Yeah,
That's why I said, are we talking about language here? Are we talking conceptually here about old school vegans?
yeah. Jordan also referred to others as things twice, to my knowledge.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I heard at least twice he referred to animals as things.
Oh, right, did he?
Yeah.
It'll be worth rewatching. I don't think it's
Well,
worth.
so at least twice that I heard, because then he had the audacity a bit later on when he was having a go at Ronnie to talk about making sure that we use language correctly, because I put things in question in capitals.
I
Sorry.
was going to say, I think Graham picked up on that as well, because he put something in the chat as I joined, saying he has the audacity to say such and
Yeah,
such when he
literally,
does
that's
refer
what
to
I'm saying.
plenty of
He
things.
did. He pointed out about language and how we should use it properly, and it's just like, you what?
But yeah, like I say, Roger, you and Ronnie compose yourselves even in that situation, that scenario, incredibly well. And that's the thing that I took away is actually, like Andy was saying, the difference was respect. Like the difference between the 3 that were there and the 2 that were there was the fact that you guys conducted yourselves in an incredibly impeccable manner compared to, not that I'm saying that anybody was completely out of order. I would say that Jordan was touching on the line. But even despite the fact that it looked like there was at least one person just trying to antagonize both of you, you composed yourselves impeccably well.
Well, I think George and David were kind of a bit critical of Jordan as well, weren't they? A little bit, kind of.
Yeah.
Let them finish the sentence and let them speak, and that kind of stuff.
Well, I think David had no choice eventually, because it got to the point where I think every single person in the chat, even those that were having a little argument about communism between themselves, all said, "Will you let Ronnie speak?" So I kind of think that Rams had no choice but to kind of intervene, and that's when he started muting him.
Yeah, when the people with green names started saying let Ronnie
He's
speak,
going to say, the people that
David
pay his
reacted.
bills, he has to listen, I suppose. But yeah, he did allow a lot just in the time that I was watching, and I missed the first 25 minutes. So
I didn't notice that he actually physically muted him, though.
yeah, he muted him a couple of times when Ronnie was responding, because he wasn't anywhere like what Tim was doing, but he was still doing the thing where you could see his lips move, but no noise was coming out.
I just wish it was like that all the
Also,
way
I don't
through
know
the
whether it was
entire
his girlfriend that he mentioned or what, but Jordan clearly had someone sat next to him also, because he constantly kept speaking to them and getting like little notes from them. Like he was clearly being directed when he was talking about, I've got the screenshot right in front of me right now, all that sort of stuff. There was someone there, so like that didn't help either.
No, I wanted to explore the thing about what ideally would the camp out be for, because they've obviously succeeded in getting a lot of people there. Well, arguably, if it was a kind of activist orientated thing, like a gathering or something, presumably there'd be a lot less people because a lot of them go for the music.
Yeah.
And I think David Rams kind of accepted that, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
For most of
And I mean, to be
the
perfectly
music
honest,
thing.
that because it wasn't made clear at all, I don't think Ronnie got a chance to properly defend himself, and no one else sort of brought it up. But Ronnie, at no point that I ever saw, tried to cancel Camp Out. It was a criticism about the venue because apparently no better venue could be found, which has now been found. So the criticism, not only was it only about the venue, has been proven valid, because they've
Yeah.
managed to take that on board and find a better, more suitable venue. So actually, if anything, besides the personal jibes, which Jordan himself admitted were both the same back and forth and then denied afterwards, if anything, Ronnie should have been getting an apology from Jordan saying, look, you know, you were right, we should have looked harder because we've managed to find somewhere better. Not you owe us an apology for something that other people commented on Facebook a year ago.
Would that not have meant that somebody needed to maybe swallow a small amount of pride, though?
Yeah, obviously, clearly.
It doesn't sound like that meme was very good, though, does it?
No, it didn't, to be fair. But if I don't remember seeing that on like any of, I remember where I read all the anti-camp out stuff was actually on Sam Morley's wall, not anything to do with Ronnie. That's where I saw the main criticism of camp out.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one because, I mean, ironic thing is that, you know, Ronnie's not really big into the SABs and single issues either, but he ended up being on that side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being funny. Like, I heard about this from other activists like Doug Moore, and people who were very, very vocal about it. Um,
Yeah,
I
Doug
don't.
was, I was going to say, Doug was really vocal because he was
Doug
even
was
going to the point where he
really
was having a
vocal
go at
about it.
individuals, wasn't he? So, like,
Yeah,
why
he
hasn't
was. Yeah,
Jordan got a problem with Doug or Sam?
but I don't recall anybody talking about Ronnie's position on it.
That's
But
what
I,
that was my memory too. That like all the information I pretty much got about Stamford Hall and everything came from Sam Morley's wall, and it was like Sam that was at the forefront of like, this isn't acceptable. We need to oppose this. I don't remember even seeing Ronnie's name mentioned, but yet he seems to get all the flack for everything that anyone said. But one of the also things I put in the chat on that thing that got ignored was that. If Ronnie only put up a meme, okay, it doesn't sound like the greatest meme ever, but like Jordan even reiterated himself that there was no words, there was no questions, it was just a meme. So Ronnie puts up a meme, and all of a sudden, hundreds and hundreds of people start vocalizing their disgust or their distaste against Camp Out. That tells me that that was the general opinion, Jordan. That's not Ronnie that's gone, everyone needs to think this. That's Ronnie that's put, who agrees with this? And everyone's like, me, I do. So maybe you should address that and actually, you know, take that criticism that's actually held by quite a few people.
Well, I mean,
Clearly,
I don't know either way, but they disagreed on how many times this thing had been shared. I mean, it suggested almost that Ronnie was the main person sharing it.
yeah. But like I said, I don't remember
Ronnie
ever
said it
seeing
was
his
all over
name
the place.
personally. I remember other people's names and I remember other people's criticisms even now, but I don't remember Ronnie being part of that list. So I just think that he's been made kind of like this. I'm not saying scapegoat. I just said it, but you know, kind of like the patsy, so to speak, for what all of the criticism was from everyone all over the place, because he's the one that Jordan can remember, or maybe it's because he did the debate with Tim.
Well, I mean, obviously, there's got to be some element of Ronnie's status is as well, because first of all, he's got that status, but also he will appear on those kind of shows.
Yeah.
I mean, David Rams was saying that there was other people they want to talk to, but they won't talk. You know.
Yeah, that's probably very true too. Good point. But I have recently posted that as an enhancement. If ever anyone wants to go and listen who doesn't know what we're talking about, the Tim and Ronnie one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep your shirt on.
But it's well worth a listen, especially if you listen to the one today, to list how both Chris and Tim defend Jordan versus what he's said himself today. There is a fair few contradictions there, so that's why I put it to public earlier after that show, because I thought, well, ideal time for people to go and watch it. I didn't want to make it public before in case people thought that I was trying to stir the pot.
Well, I guess people will think that anyway because of the timing, I suppose.
Well, that's why I made sure I did it after the show rather than before. So, like, well, now I'm actually doing it to show the difference between his opinion. I mean, Ronnie's pretty consistent and he's admitted what
Well,
changes he's made, whereas he's not admitted or acknowledged anything.
I mean,
Not even that they managed to find a venue that didn't exist.
somebody in that live said that we should be arguing against non-vegans instead of arguing with each other. And I actually replied saying, so to not point out discrepancies that other vegans are making is an incredibly dangerous position to hold, because I almost think that we need to hold ourselves accountable, because otherwise anybody could just be spouting off, any old rhetoric. But we can't question that because they're also vegan.
Yeah,
Like,
you're right. It's a very dangerous position, but it's a
yeah,
commonly held one.
yeah, exactly. It's like somebody be going out there saying, the chicken flesh industry has fallen by 57% because of vegan influence, and we can't question that because they're vegan.
Yeah.
Like, no substance, no, because the vegan movement should be based upon education, and it is always been based on education. It's been based upon research and studies and facts. So the fact that we can't question someone just because they also claim to be a vegan is, for my opinion, a very ignorant and a very dangerous position to hold. I almost think that we should be questioning ourselves as much as anyone else, in the right way, obviously. But
Yeah,
that's like,
absolutely. And I mean, there's not always that everyone that you're potentially going to have that conversation with is going to even take it as bad or negative. They might well say,
yeah,
you know what, I've never thought about that. Thank you.
yeah, exactly. If somebody
So
corrected something I had done, I would immediately research it, maybe speak to my peers, and correct myself.
you'll have to give him a super chat if you want an answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, on that note, the dog is staring at me. I feel bad, so I'm gonna say goodbye to everyone, and we'll call it a night.
Yeah, good night, everyone.
Thanks so much for
See you,
joining
everyone.
us. Have a great day, night, or evening wherever you are, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye,
See you
guys.
later.